Chapter 1662. After all, the size of the exit was limited. In the channel, there were still people maintaining order, and people kept coming out. Most of these newcomers were shocked and dumbfounded. For example, the first batch to come out was the team led by the Thug Academy. Except for the people from the Thug Academy, everyone who had a little relationship with Han Fei was in this team. For example, the hidden fishers of the scout team on the skeleton shore, Yu Lingyun, and the others. Another example was the group of people who had stayed in the Empyrean waterfall, the Scattered Stars 4th Unit, the Refining Hall, Join Ling, He Xiaoyu, and the others. The 36 towns were in the same batch as Han Fei. In short, everyone who had a little relationship with Han Fei came in the first batch. There was no backdoor operation. After all, it didn't matter who came first or who came last, they all arrived at the same time. It was only because everyone was closer that they were arranged together. Of course, this also had something to do with Han Fei. After all, Han Fei was very popular in the Yinyang sky. They had a good relationship with Han Fei, so of course they wouldn't deliberately alienate him. Luo Xiaobai also arranged all these people together. Among these 25 teams, Luo Xiaobai also had absolute control over these teams through the various commanders of the Scattered Stars Island. Otherwise, such a huge army couldn't be managed by one person at all. At this moment, Qing Chun, Yui Wuming, and Ning Jingyao finally got together again, and they were chatting together. Ning Jingyao said, "Qing Chun, why didn't you hang out with the people from your academy? Why did you come to our team?" Qing Chun snorted. "I can't help it. I was isolated in the academy. Besides, you're all here. What am I doing over there? By the way, it's almost our turn. I'm so looking forward to it." Yui said, "Don't be ignorant. Stay calm. After all, this is their territory. We have to show our strength." Wuming held his long sword and said coldly, "Yes, we can't lose our momentum." After a moment, swish, swish, when Wuming and the others came out of the channel, they only felt their eyes light up. When they took a closer look, they all gasped. "Damn it, what the hell are those bugs that look like city walls over my head?" Also, the dense branches and vines made it seem as if they had entered an underwater jungle. Hiss! Qing Chun took a breath. "There are only a few humans. Is this the Zerg clan?" "Yui, spirit plant lineage. Hiss, if I'm not mistaken, we're standing on a tree, right? How big is this tree?" Following that, a humming sound filled their ears. Wang Long's voice said, "Look at the one holding the sword, he looks pretty cool. That skinny guy is too thin and ugly, much uglier than Han Fei." Qing Chen looked around at the people around him. "Are they talking about me?" A tree demon shook its leaves. "I sense the aura of a demonic plant from that girl. This should be one of the more powerful human manipulators. Although she's not as good looking as the people on our side, she's still better looking than the men on our side." Yui's face turned green. "Have I fallen so low that I have to compare myself to a man in terms of beauty?" However, when Yui noticed the fairy-like Shui Mu heavenly human, she gasped. Especially the women on the Shui Mu heavenly human side. God, that skin, that figure, that face. Yui didn't feel good. Do the humans on this side all look like this? Why aren't there any good-looking ones? Immediately afterward, Join Ling, Yu Lingyun, He Xiaoyu, and the others walked out one after another. The moment Join Ling appeared, there was a buzzing sound and countless Zergs shouted in shock, "This one is beautiful, this one is the most beautiful." It seems that there are also beautiful people in the Yinyang heaven. Even the people on our side can't compare to them. A bird said enviously, "It seems that only explorers in the Yinyang heaven can be good-looking, right?" Although many people were amazed when they saw Luo Xiaobai and Yi Xian earlier. However, when these Zergs, the Sky Clan, and even the Shui Mu heavenly human, saw Join Ling, they couldn't help but be attracted by her otherworldly temperament. Some people even secretly sighed. Her temperament is even comparable to Her Majesty the Queen. Who is she? The eyes of the heavenly venerable Shui Mu and the explorers were glowing. Juan Ling's beauty was worth fighting. A venerable even said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Han Fei, can we propose to the women of the Yin-Yang heaven?" Han Fei grinned and replied, "Which one do you like?" The man said, "Here." "You mean the one in white?" Han Fei's smile turned cold. F***ck off. I brought my men here to fight, not to flirt with you. Seeing Han Fei refuse, the venerable didn't think much of it. He guessed that Han Fei, this ugly man, must have taken a fancy to him. Why didn't he let others do it? How annoying. Gradually, more and more people came out of the exit. As a representative of the human race, Wu Shangxue walked out. In the past, Han Fei was also in Wu Shangshue's Flying Feather Tribe. Wu Shangxue looked at Luo Xiaobai and said, "The Flying Feather Tribe can accept 50,000 Yin-Yang heavenly human. The other 10 tribes can accept 20,000 each. Shall we set off now?" Luo Xiaobai nodded and turned to Old Bai and the others. "President, please lead the team. As long as you follow the instructions of the teleportation array, someone will guide you along the way. When you arrive, there will be someone to receive you." Old Bai nodded, turned around, and shouted in a low voice, "Follow me." More and more people came out of the entrance, and their speed was also increasing. Almost every moment, there were exclamations. Han Fei said goodbye to Luo Xiaobai and sneaked away. Half a day later, the Flying Feather Tribe, 5 teams, which meant 50,000 people, settled in the Flying Feather Tribe. The residence was on an uninhabited tree trunk, which seemed to have been deliberately vacated by them. Every leaf here could be used for cultivation. There were no houses in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. It was the same to rest on the leaves of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Even on the scattered Stars Island, many people didn't sleep in their houses. Just like the Dark Hunter Legion, they could sleep anywhere. Only when there was a fixed place to set up camp would there be a living requirement. Of course, for the people of the Thug Academy, they couldn't live without a house. According to Luo Xiaobai's communication and arrangement, almost everyone who arrived in the Shuemu heaven would be arranged and introduced one-to-one. Although there were many people from the Yin-Yang heaven, there were also many people from the other side. Not to mention one-to-one, even if there were more than one, it wouldn't be a problem, but there was no need for that. Although the people of the Yin-Yang heaven came to prepare for war. But before that, they really had to familiarize themselves with the environment here. There was also a need for friendship between the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven. According to Han Fei's guess, in the near future, the cage might collapse at any time. At that time, the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven would definitely collide and even unite. In the further future, the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven might be invaded by other Xuantians. That wasn't impossible. Therefore, the friendship between the two was very necessary. At this moment, a group of people from the Thug Academy, including Luo Xiaobai, were eating hot pot on the leave. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai didn't need to care about anyone. After all, there were one-to-one people guiding the people of the Yin-Yang heaven. This time, even Han Fei didn't expect that the Shuemu heaven would be so friendly. He had thought that after coming over, there would most likely be a fight. After all, the people of the Shuemu heaven would despise the people of the Yin-Yang heaven for being ugly. Once a small conflict broke out between the two sides, fighting would be inevitable, just like himself. How many people had despised him when he first came here? To Han Fei's surprise, the people of the Yin-Yang heaven didn't get angry when they were called ugly. Many people even tacitly admitted that they were ugly. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Yixian, sit down. Why are you sitting so close to me when we're just having a meal?" Yixian snorted and said, "I'm eating with you. What are you looking at today?" Zhang Xuanyu denied flatly. "Watch your words. Please don't ruin my image. I'm just admiring." Hey, don't hit me. Do you think I can't beat you? Hey. Han Fei and the others were eating hot pot. Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head and looked at a leaf not far away. On that leaf, a man in a black cloak was sitting cross-legged. The void trembled, and Wushang Shui had already appeared. Wushang Shui looked directly at Han Fei. "Who is this?" Han Fei said indifferently, "The Grandmaster of the Shuemu Heaven. There's no one you need to suspect in the entire Yin-Yang Heaven. Would you like to come over and have a hot pot?" Wushang Shui glanced at Han Fei indifferently and then at the black-cloaked man. "I can eat by myself." The appearance of Wushang Shui made the eyes of the members of the Thug Academy fall on the black-cloaked man. Han Fei shrugged helplessly and said, "Junior Uncle Faceless, have you been exposed so soon?" "Wow. Junior Uncle Faceless." Yi Xian and the others looked at each other. Who is Junior Uncle Faceless? In fact, when the name Junior Uncle Faceless came out, except for Chu Jinan and Yi Xian, the others immediately knew who he was. Jiang Qin, Yang Xie, Wang Dashui, and the others all stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Patriarch." "Ha ha ha. Eat your food. Just now I went to the great illusionary land to take a look. I didn't expect to be discovered. However, there are indeed a lot of strong masters here. The leader of the Flying Feather tribe is no weaker than me now." Han Fei said, "When you recover to your peak, it won't be a problem for you to suppress the 1,000 stars again." Forget it. Eat your food. I'll continue to go to the great illusionary land." After dinner, Han Fei greeted Old Bai and the others, and then went to the side with Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renquang. Han Fei said, "Xiaobai, now is not the time of war. After a few days of familiarizing yourself with the battlefield, let everyone fight normally. At the same time, it will also announce the arrival of the Yin-Yang Heaven to the Baibei Royal City. During my absence, if any venerable on our side disobeys, you don't have to show them any respect. Patriarch is here. You can either fight or kill them. We must establish absolute authority." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Okay, I'll wait for your news." Hearing this, Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, "Fei Fei, where are you going?" Lu Renquang also said, "What do you want to do secretly?" Han Fei grinned. "I'm going to the Baibei Royal City." Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang. Chapter 1663. According to Han Fei's plan, the most important purpose of the so-called expedition was not to fight but to communicate with the races of the two worlds. The people who came from the Yin-Yang Heaven were relatively small and not very strong. However, they were the pioneers of the Yin-Yang Heaven's contact with the outside world, and they were the most likely to rise. In any case, this expedition was of great significance. Han Fei specially communicated with Luo Xiaobai. At this moment, after making arrangements for everyone, Han Fei left a projection and left. This projection was only half as strong as a venerable one, which had little influence on Han Fei's actual strength. The sea where the Baibei Royal City was located was 1,000,000 kilometers away. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and searched for other entrances to the Lightning Prison. In fact, if Han Fei wanted to go to the Lightning Prison, he could either kill a heavenly talent from the Baibei Royal City and sneak in, or find other entrances. Han Fei had thought that it hadn't been long since he left the Shuemu Heaven, and it hadn't been long since he killed Zhang Xiaotian. If he disguised as Zhang Xiaotian and sneaked in, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, Zhang Xiaotian was a reincarnated old guy. God knew what kind of relationship he had with the White Armor Emperor. If Han Fei was seen through, he probably wouldn't be able to escape. As for the other heavenly talents, why would they open a trial in a forbidden area? It would also attract attention. After all, not everyone was qualified to enter a trial in a forbidden area. He had made a lot of preparations when he pretended to be the Fish Dragon King. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Han Fei felt that it would be better to find another entrance. Was there only one small entrance in the vast lightning prison in the Baibei Royal City? That was obviously impossible. As long as it was a space, there would always be a weakness. For example, the seal of the cage was strong enough, right? The stronger one was, the more difficult it was to enter, but it was only one kind of space. If one reached the highest level in the Tao of space, they could easily make a breakthrough. For example, Chun Huangdian had left a projection in the yin-yang heaven from somewhere. It was not a problem for those mighty figures to pass through space barriers. Therefore, Han Fei believed that he should be able to find a way to enter with the nautical panorama. 2 days passed. Han Fei didn't get closer to the Baibei royal city. Instead, he got further and further away. In a region of dense fog close to the cage, there was a danger zone with a circumference of around 50,000 kilometers. Han Fei vaguely remembered that this place was marked as a dangerous place on the sea map that the Life Queen gave him. Although this place was a little far from the White Shell capital, it was even further from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Hence, the Life Queen wouldn't explore it rashly. However, although the Life Queen wouldn't personally explore such a place, that didn't stop her from sending people to explore it. Therefore, there was a mark on the map, which meant that this place might have been explored. Han Fei was surprised. Is the Thunder Prison here? Han Fei pondered. The weird Thunder Swamp in the Thunder Prison is so obvious. The Life Queen must know about it, right? Perhaps they hadn't finished exploring. Han Fei took out the 9-palace fate ruler and casually measured it. When the ruler landed on the ominous hexagram, Han Fei smiled. Looks like it's not a big problem, we can enter. Once he entered the danger zone, the entire sea was filled with whirlpools. It was a bit like the abyssal chasm in the level 3 fishery, which was surrounded by a gale and a weird space. The same was true for this space. After Han Fei entered, he found that his perception was entangled by the whirlpools here, and he couldn't explore too much. The old turtle said, "My perception is also being sucked away, but there are creatures here." It was only natural that there were creatures in the sea. However, there were indeed very few creatures in such a dangerous place, unless those creatures had completely adapted to such an environment. Han Fei didn't have any scruples. Although the suction force of the whirlpools was very strong, as strong as that of a peak-level explorer at the periphery, it couldn't shake Han Fei at all. When the whirlpools here had reached the level of a peak-level beginner venerable, a weird thing happened. Boom! A muffled thunder sounded at the bottom of the sea, and an electric arc came from afar and hit Han Fei. No matter how fast Han Fei was, he couldn't outrun an electric attack. Therefore, even though the attack wasn't too strong, Han Fei was still blasted back more than 100 kilometers. When Han Fei stabilized his body, he was surprised to find that the flesh and blood of his left arm had been completely cut open. Even the bones of his indestructible golden body had a shallow white mark left on them. Electric arc? Is it that electric arc trying to penetrate me? It shouldn't be an electric arc. Moreover, isn't this attack a little too powerful? Han Fei switched the Tianqi Great Path to the Great Path of Time. Boom! When the electric arc appeared again, a blue barrier suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei. At that moment, a huge ribbonfish that was 10 meters long, flat, and as sharp as a sword appeared in Han Fei's eyes. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name Thunder Emperor Ribbonfish. Introduction. This is a big Thunder Emperor ribbonfish that grows abnormally. Because it has been absorbing the power of lightning for a long time, its soul and body were shattered when it was young, but it was lucky enough to survive. The Thunder Emperor ribbonfish is not very intelligent, very aggressive, warlike, bloodthirsty, and loves lightning. Because its speed is as fast as lightning, its blade can cut ultra-quality divine weapons. Level 84 quality, legendary, can grow. Realm entry contains spiritual energy, 382545 combat skills, Thunder Flash collectible Thunderbone, Shadowless Scale, Eye of Agility, Emperor Tendon absorbable. Note: the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish is extremely rare. Among the thousands of clans in the sea, its speed can be ranked among the top 10,000. When he saw this information, Han Fei was surprised. Damn, this is an intermediate venerable ribbonfish? An intermediate venerable can cut its own flesh and blood? One could only imagine how much combat power its speed brought to it. It could be seen that when the speed reached a certain level, its combat power could soar. The reason why it couldn't cut his indestructible golden body was purely because of its realm. After all, Han Fei's indestructible golden body, in a sense, was comparable to that of a king. If it could be cut open by a mere intermediate venerable, how strong would this intermediate venerable be? Chilla, the moment the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish encountered the time barrier, it twisted its body and was about to dodge. However, Han Fei's void lines instantly stretched out. The Thunder Emperor ribbonfish turned into an electric arc and fled again. Han Fei didn't even have time to shout and directly activated the Dao. There's a restriction spell here. But that wasn't enough. Han Fei stepped on it, and the surrounding space was shortened. Hiss, at that moment, after Han Fei did so many things, the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish had already run dozens of kilometers away as soon as a void line was buckled on it. Ho! Hundreds of beasts' devoured souls went straight to the soul of the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, which made its body stiffen. Han Fei turned his hand and buckled all the void lines. He didn't give it any chance and directly took it down. Phew! Han Fei was slightly relieved. It seemed that this thing was only fast, but not as fast as the speed of light. If it was just the normal speed of lightning, Han Fei would have surpassed it by a lot. After all, the normal speed of lightning was generally only a few hundred kilometers per second. This was a venerable level sea beast that was good at speed. Of course, its speed was different. Therefore, its speed was much faster than the theoretical speed of lightning, at least 10 times faster, but it was still within the range of attack. If it hadn't met Han Fei, if it hadn't been bloodthirsty, the result might not have been like this. Being caught by Han Fei, it was doomed to die. The old turtle said, "Me! I've never seen this creature before. It's as fast as lightning. If it grows up, it shouldn't be underestimated. It's a pity that it has been caught by you now." Han Fei thought to himself, now the demon purification pot and the little rattan are incomplete, and I can't continue to synthesize new contractual spiritual beasts. So, I'll use this Thunder Emperor ribbonfish to upgrade Little Gold. Little Gold and the others can continue to be fused. For example, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was also forcibly fused from 3 tails to 9. As for this Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, although it was also a legendary creature and could still grow, it was not domesticated after all. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care. After going another 8,000 kilometers into the dangerous place, Han Fei felt that the suction force of the vortex here had reached the level of a peak-level intermediate venerable. In other words, those who could come to this place had to be at least at the peak-level intermediate venerable. Generally speaking, it might be an advanced venerable. Obviously, if the creatures living here wanted to resist the power of lightning and quickly get rid of the suction force of the vortex, they either had to be extremely fast, like the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, or they had to have tremendous strength to get rid of the suction force. Clank, clank, clank. At this point, Han Fei was standing above a vortex. This was the way pointed out by the nautical panorama, which meant that he should be able to enter the prison of thunder from here. Han Fei couldn't help but speculate that there were countless vortexes here. Did each vortex lead to a different place? Of course, this was just Han Fei's guess. After all, he had seen hundreds of powerful vortexes like this on his way here. At this point, Han Fei wasn't panicked. The ominous hexagram of the 9-palace ruler of Providence might be really ominous for others, but it was just a piece of cake for him. Without hesitation, Han Fei jumped into the vortex. When he entered the vortex, the crazy suction force made Han Fei's blood speed up. The qi and blood in his body began to spin like blades. If it were anyone else, even an advanced venerable, they might have been minced by his own flesh and blood. Han Fei instantly realized why such a place was rarely explored. When Han Fei began to spin with the vortex, he saw that the space at the bottom of the vortex was opened by the vortex. It was like a teleportation array that sent him out of this space. When the suction force disappeared, Han Fei saw nothing but darkness in front of him. Han Fei discovered, to his surprise, that it was an endless void. On the other side of the void, Han Fei saw a white spot. Needless to say, it was the exit. Boom, boom, boom! Han Fei crawled into the white spot. In an instant, dozens of bolts of lightning blasted down at Han Fei's face. But Han Fei was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. He took a long breath and said, "I'm in." The old turtle said, "Why don't you find a place with slightly weaker power and let my turtle trigreen body come out?" Chapter 1664. BM. Han Fei had experienced the lightning prison once and knew that it was an excellent place for cultivation. As long as he could withstand the lightning bombardment here, it would be excellent for body-tempering cultivation. The power of the lightning that Han Fei felt had reached the level of a peak-level advanced venerable. Perhaps the direction given by the nautical panorama was a suitable place for Han Fei to cultivate. Therefore, as soon as they came out, the old turtle wanted Han Fei to find a safer place. Han Fei also needed the old turtle's help, so he couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, are you going to use Gui Sanqing's body in the future? It seems that its potential is not very good, right?" The old turtle said, "Before I meet the most suitable turtle clan, I can't stay here, can I? Otherwise, if I really go to the outside world, won't I be at the mercy of others? I also have a cultivation method to speed up my cultivation. In the future, when I find a turtle clan with more potential, I can possess it." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. What a devil! This old turtle always wants to possess other people's bodies. However, in terms of cultivation speed, possession was indeed the fastest. Of course, Han Fei knew that possession wasn't without any risk. Someone else's body was always someone else's body. If possession was so easy to use, then immortality would be a joke. The immortal level would be meaningless then. Half an hour later, Han Fei sent the old turtle to a place where the power of the lightning was only at the level of a beginner intermediate venerable. As soon as the old turtle came out, he and Han Fei were bombarded by 100 lightning bolts. The old tortoise's shell crackled with lightning. After a few seconds, the old turtle was struck back to its original form. On the turtle shell, an array appeared. Immediately afterward, many lightning bolts seemed to be attracted by the turtle shell and all struck it. The old turtle seemed to be relieved. Seeing this scene, Han Fei raised his eyelids. No wonder he was an emperor. Gui Sanqing's body was only half a venerable. It hadn't been long in the hands of the old turtle, but at this moment, it had already reached the peak-level junior venerable. At this moment, the old turtle was swallowing lightning frantically. This growth speed was probably no slower than Han Fei's. Ignoring the old turtle, Han Fei said, "I'm going to cultivate. Let's talk about it when I break through to the peak." 1 month later. The thunder purgatory was nearly 20,000 li deep. There were tens of thousands of lightning bolts here, as well as spirit-gathering formations that constantly appeared and disappeared like raindrops. Under the bombardment of a peak-level advanced venerable, countless electric currents surged on the surface of Han Fei's body, and his flesh scabbed and fell off again and again. The surrounding spirit-gathering arrays maintained the supply of spiritual energy for Han Fei's body to consume when he was baptized by lightning. In fact, as early as more than half a month ago, Han Fei's body had almost been repaired, and he had almost cultivated to the limit. In fact, there was a huge difference between the lightning in the lightning prison and the lightning that descended from the heavens. For example, when Han Fei deduced the void fishing art, the power of lightning, although not a heavenly tribulation, contained the power of the great path. In a sense, it was a much weaker heavenly tribulation. However, what the lightning in the thunder domain lacked was precisely the power of the great Tao that descended from the heavens. Therefore, Han Fei, who had planned to cultivate for a short time, spent a whole month cultivating. Gotcha! With a cracking sound, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, Han Fei felt that the power that had been accumulated in his body had a place to vent. It was as if a river had overflowed and a new channel had been opened. The power of the peak-level Venerable was spreading all over his body. At this moment, although Han Fei was still bathed in lightning, his flesh, soul, and bones were transforming at the same time. In other words, at the moment when Han Fei broke through to the peak-level Venerable, his flesh and blood really caught up with his soul and bones, and the three reached a balance. At this point, there was actually only one thing left for Han Fei to do, to truly unify the three. Let the flesh and blood nourish the bones, and let the soul immerse into the bones and blood. This was also the step that Ren Tianfei was taking. Boom, boom, boom. After being bombarded for a full hour, Han Fei's realm of the peak-level Venerable was finally stabilized. Han Fei immediately looked at his personal information, and the information appeared in his eyes. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 89, Venerable, Chaotic Energy 957, Spiritual Power 147211, Perception Range greater than 50,000 kilometers, Power greater than 16,132 waves, First Spiritual Heritage Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage Unknown, First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, level 78. Second Spiritual Beast King Sparrow, level 70. Main Art Void Arrival, level 7 of Void Fishing, King level, Divine Quality. Phew! Han Fei's eyes flashed. Sure enough, the peak level and the peak level of an advanced Venerable were two completely different concepts. His spiritual power had increased by more than 10,000, and his strength had increased by 1,500 wave. To Han Fei's surprise, maybe because he used Little Black and Little White the most and most frequently, Little Black and Little White had also leveled up by one level. However, this was not the point. After breaking through to the peak-level Venerable, Han Fei's strength had soared. If Han Fei had barely reached the level of a pseudo-king before, now Han Fei had completely reached the level of a pseudo-king, or even stronger. Han Fei was not overjoyed. The peak-level Venerable was just a matter of time. It could even be said that the fusion of flesh, blood, bones, and soul was actually something that would happen naturally when the conditions were right. Ren Tianfei said that when the three were perfectly combined, he would become a half-king. Han Fei raised his head, only to see the bolts of lightning striking down. He thought to himself, is there a better training environment than this? Why don't I take advantage of this environment to try to fuse the three? Han Fei immediately sat cross-legged in the lightning prison and let the lightning strike. When Han Fei tried to activate the power of the three, he felt that his blood was boiling, his bones were itchy, and his soul seemed to be pricked by needles. Cough! Han Fei coughed unconsciously, and blood flowed out of his mouth. Han Fei looked up at the lightning in the sky. Immediately, Han Fei took a breath and said, "This lightning is of no benefit to the last step of training?" The old turtle, who kept in touch with Han Fei, said, "The combination of the three powers is disrupted by the power of lightning. You can try. Try it in the space of your calabash." Han Fei thought to himself, that's the only way. This is related to whether I can become a half-king. If possible, I'd like to cross the two realms of a peak-level Venerable and a half-king at the same time. The array he created for himself barely lasted for 2 seconds, and then Han Fei immediately entered Forge the Universe. At this moment, Forge the Universe was very cold. Only Little Black and Little White were hovering and swimming in the pool. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others were all left in the corpse breeding land by Han Fei. Han Fei could only rely on his own resource reserves to cultivate. Fortunately, he kept a sun-moon shell for himself with the resources he robbed from the Zhang family. Although it was just a sun-moon shell, It was full of spiritual fruits, spiritual spring, spiritual stones, and so on. Han Fei sat cross-legged again. After a while, the feeling just now came back. His blood was boiling, his bones were itchy, and his soul seemed to be pricked by needles. That feeling was very uncomfortable. His soul was itchy and painful, making Han Fei almost unable to concentrate. However, this pain was still bearable. This time, without the interference of the lightning bombardment, Han Fei finally felt that his flesh and soul were being sucked and trembling slightly with his bones as the center. During the training, Han Fei didn't even dare to move and was fully focused. Han Fei found that his indestructible golden body was changing too. It was as if every inch of his body was being polished anew. His bones were affecting his flesh and blood with the power of his divine soul. At this time, Han Fei realized something. Once he completed this step, he would not need to consume any additional energy. Even if his body was smashed into pieces, it could be reassembled in an instant. Yes, it was a recombination, not a rebirth. There was a clear difference between this and the blood rebirth of the exalted realm. In terms of blood rebirth, every drop of his flesh and soul would be able to be reborn from a single drop of blood after he had successfully cultivated it. Unlike ordinary venerables, who needed to hide the power of blood rebirth in a wisp of their divine soul and flesh. Besides, Han Fei's body could sense each other even if they were thousands of kilometers apart. In battle, unless the opponent completely crushed his flesh and bones, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to kill him. Of course, although this recombination ability was much stronger than blood rebirth, if he encountered an absolutely powerful enemy, he still wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, this technique was not invincible. However, this method also guaranteed Han Fei's chance of survival. After a long time, Han Fei felt that a phalanx in his palm had a weird feeling that it could be separated from his body. Han Fei suddenly woke up. Huff! Han Fei immediately looked at his phalanx. With a thought in his mind, a piece of bone appeared on the finger of his right hand. Han Fei felt that his consciousness could be completely injected into this phalanx. At the same time, Han Fei could also feel that this seemed to be an indestructible phalanx. At this moment, the old turtle suddenly said, "It seems that you have comprehended the true meaning of seclusion." After hearing this, Han Fei was dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" The old turtle said, "This can be said to be the longest time you have been completely immersed in seclusion. For a full 3 months your mind was completely focused on seclusion. You didn't waver at all." Puff! Swoosh! Han Fei jumped up and widened his eyes. "How long did you say it was? How long have I been cultivating?" The old turtle said leisurely, 3 months. To be precise, there are still 3 days to 3 months. Han Fei. Chapter 1665. When Han Fei heard the old turtle say that he had been in seclusion for 3 months, he was dumbfounded. He thought it would only take him half an hour at most. But it turned out that 3 months had passed? "Are you kidding me?" Han Fei said with a black face. "Old Yuan, are you sure you're not lying to me? Have I really been in seclusion for 3 months? The old turtle said, "Of course. However, it has only been less than 6 days in the outside world." Han Fei didn't know what to do. Even if he was in Forge the Universe, so what? He had only spent 3 months honing a phalanx? It was just a phalanx, not a finger. This thing. If he wanted to completely refine all the bones in his body, how long would it take? At this rate of cultivation, it would take him 52 years to completely temper all the bones in his body. In an instant, Han Fei understood why Ren Tianfen stayed in the central holy city every day. Because this guy was tempering his bones. God knew how long he had been tempering. Logically speaking, Ren Tianfen's aptitude should be weaker than his. After all, Ren Tianfen didn't have the Emperor's Path as his meridians. Even Han Fei needed 52 years to cultivate from the peak stage of the Venerable Realm to the Demi-King realm. Then, it was conceivable that it would take other people hundreds of years to cultivate the indestructible overlord body. Wow! Han Fei gasped and then looked at his resource consumption. His eyelids twitched. About 2% of his resources had been consumed. In order to temper a phalanx, the consumption of resources was as high as 2%? What kind of divine bone was this? Gulp! Han Fei swallowed. The last step of the indestructible body must be extremely powerful. If a phalanx required so many resources, how much would his strength increase? When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that his strength had increased by 10 waves. Yes, Han Fei was right. It took him 3 months to temper an indestructible phalanx and increase his strength by 10 waves. Han Fei's expression was strange. Was this number small? In fact, it was not small. If the strength of a small finger bone could increase his strength by 10 waves, then, when he finished tempering his entire body, his strength would increase by at least 2,000 waves. With his current strength, coupled with his 2,000 waves of strength as a foundation, his strength could almost instantly kill a strength-type demi-king. After learning this result, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Anyway, the battle in the Shuemu sky hadn't started yet. He might as well give Luo Xiaobai and the others more time. The interaction between the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven was definitely a process of rapid growth for the experts of both sides. Back then, when he had first arrived here, if he hadn't remembered to go through the heavenly tribulation and then wander the outer sea region, he would definitely have gone to look for the humans of the Flying Feather tribe to learn the battle bow technique. At this moment, although the resources he had on him were not enough for his own cultivation, however, he would cultivate as much as he could. Every time he finished tempering a bone, his strength would increase by 10 waves. In any case, this was also a form of improvement. Furthermore, other than an increase in strength, this indestructible finger bone definitely had other strong aspects. Therefore, delaying for a while longer was not a loss for him. Furthermore, he felt that 3 months was no more than the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Why did he have to worry about the time? He could just regard 3 months as half an hour. Thinking this through, Han Fei felt that even if he exhausted all his resources and finished the cultivation in one go, it would only take him more than 3 years, which he could afford. And so, 12 years later, about 7 months had passed in the real world, Han Fei suddenly woke up from his cultivation. For him, it seemed that only a few hours had passed. When Han Fei woke up, he was a little dumbfounded. The resources of a whole sea-swallowing seashell, plus the resources in his Forge the Universe, were not even enough to temper his 2 arms? Now, Han Fei found that one of his arms had great strength, but the other arm— no, the other arm, the palm was less than half tempered. Han Fei couldn't help but shout, "Old Yuan, how long have I been cultivating?" The old turtle howled, "Less than 8 months. Han Fei." Han Fei glanced at his information, only to find that his strength had increased by 482 waves, and there were even zeros. Wait, Han Fei was a little surprised. The power of his divine soul had also increased by nearly 3,000 points. This scene surprised Han Fei. The cultivation of the indestructible tyrant body not only didn't consume his soul power, but could also increase his soul power by so much. He didn't even visualize anything. Crack, crack, crack. Han Fei subconsciously clenched his fists, which made a crisp sound. After moving his joints, Han Fei felt that his arm was extremely powerful. Han Fei was silent for a moment and was surprised. In the past, it consumed a lot of my soul power to fuse with my bones. Don't tell me it's the divine soul that's feeding me? Han Fei frowned, only to see that his right arm was broken, but there was no blood flowing out. He could only see the arm floating in midair, but he could still control it. Han Fei moved his fingers and clenched his fists. It felt as if the arm had never left. The body disintegration technique? How did you manage to cultivate the body disintegration technique? Your fleshly body is already strong to such an extent? The old turtle was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Han Fei was in seclusion, he didn't know what kind of seclusion Han Fei was doing. At this moment, he didn't know what Han Fei was doing. Han Fei was also puzzled. What is the body disintegration technique? The old turtle said, generally speaking, this is a great technique that can only be practiced by body refining experts. And to practice it, you need to be at least a king. Besides, not just a beginner king. You need to be a king who has been tempered many times. After practicing this technique, your body will be extremely strong and it will be extremely difficult to be killed. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Really? I'm happy that you're talking about a king. A king can practice it? It made me think that I had obtained some great technique. In fact, Han Fei thought to himself, that's right. No matter how strong the indestructible tyrant body is, it's still a body-refining technique that belongs to the venerable realm. Can it be stronger than a king-level body-refining technique? Although he said so, Han Fei was still quite excited. At least, he had practiced the king-level technique now. When he reached the Pioneer Sea realm, he would be much stronger than other people. Han Fei left Forge the Universe and reappeared in the Thunder Prison. He had no choice. He had run out of resources and had to come out. If he had known this, he wouldn't have given all the resources to Luo Xiaobai. He thought that these resources were not very useful. He didn't think that he could break through the peak level of the Venerable Realm and the Half-King Realm in one go. It seemed that no matter what happened in the future, he would have to prepare sufficient resources on him. Instead of going to the old turtle, Han Fei took out the 9-palace ruler of Providence and slid the ruler mark. A moment later, when the ruler mark fell on the hexagram of Great Misfortune, Han Fei's lips twitched. It seemed that robbing the White Shell Royal City was a bit difficult. However, since it was a great misfortune rather than a desperate situation hexagram, it meant that he still had a chance. Han Fei couldn't help but curl his lips. It seemed that he had to move the chess pieces that he had buried. A moment later, when Han Fei found the old turtle, he found that the old turtle had moved 2,000 kilometers forward. The old turtle's strength had risen from the peak level of a beginner venerable to the mid-level venerable realm. Moreover, it wasn't the kind that had just started. It seemed like after a period of time, he would be able to finish cultivating this realm. Han Fei asked in shock, "How can you cultivate so fast?" The old turtle said, "Is it fast? My energy-swallowing secret technique is not a joke at all. It's just that Gui Sanqing's aptitude is too poor. If my main body was here, with this space, my strength would have recovered to the peak of the Venerable One long ago." Han Fei snorted. "Okay, don't show off. Let's go. I'm going to the White Shell Royal City to do something." Cough cough, the old turtle asked in surprise, "You're going to the White Shell Royal City? How are you going there?" Han Fei's lips curled. Take a guess. In Han Fei's eyes, the Thunder Prison was a place of pure cultivation. Han Fei didn't want to go deeper. Han Fei's current goal was the White Shell Royal City. Of course, he didn't want to find trouble for himself. After a while, Han Fei came to the edge of the Thunder Prison under the guidance of the nautical panorama. The entrance to the White Shell Royal City was here. The Forbidden Land level trial field couldn't be opened until it was approved. The White Shell Royal City would only be opened when a heavenly talent requested to enter this place. He activated the Gemini Divine technique. The probability of Han Fei being discovered when he performed the Gemini Divine technique was very low. Unless it was the White Armor Emperor on the other side of the entrance. Otherwise, it would be hard for anyone to discover him. Even Hai Tinglei, the law enforcer of the White Shell Royal City, couldn't discover him. The black fog quietly disappeared into the entrance passage. The moment the black fog went out of the entrance, Han Fei heaved a long sigh of relief. There was no one guarding this place. It seemed that no one was guarding this place at all when no one was challenging the Forbidden Land level trial field. Han Fei looked directly at the most difficult one of the 4 forbidden land-level secret realms of the White Shell Royal City, the Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm. Yu Tianxin once told him that the Divine Demon Sea might be connected to the Wall of Death. He said that the seal was broken and then repaired by the White Armor Emperor. A big demon tried to rush out but was directly killed by the White Armor Emperor. Haha, since I can't break the seal of the Forbidden Land and enter the White Shell Royal City from the inside, then I'll let you open this passage by yourself. With this in mind, Han Fei directly entered the Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm without even using the Ruler of Destiny. For Han Fei, what was inside the Wall of Death? He knew it too well. With Han Fei's current strength, he could still defeat the Black Snail King. A mere Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm? What could it do to him? Chapter 1666. The Divine Demon Sea. The corresponding level of this trial ground should be the Explorer Realm. As a place personally sealed by the White Armor Emperor, it shouldn't be easy. When Han Fei crawled into the so-called Sea of Demons and Gods, he was surprised to find that this was clearly a violent sea in a cage. Yes, this violent sea was full of chaotic spiritual energy and energy, accompanied by the invasion of the desolation water. Generally speaking, it was difficult to survive here unless one was an explorer. Just like in the Immortal City, an island-protecting array had to be set up on the island. Han Fei explored with his perception but didn't find the existence of any living creatures. If it were just the violent sea, it would be impossible for this place to become a forbidden land. What was slightly better here than the violent sea was that the spiritual energy here was more abundant and the energy was also more abundant. And it was about 5 times more abundant than the violent sea. Han Fei saw a lot of array patterns in this area, and to his surprise, he found that these arrays turned out to be energy-absorbing arrays similar to spirit-gathering arrays. Swish! Suddenly, Han Fei's body slightly tilted, and he felt a force brushing past him. What came into Han Fei's eyes was a space crack. However, this was obviously different from a space crack. After all, this force flashed past Han Fei. In other words, it was actively attacking Han Fei. Fuse! In the secret realm, Han Fei was not afraid of being discovered by the White Armor Emperor. However, after the fusion, Han Fei was surprised to find that in the void, there seemed to be invisible shadows emerging. Moreover, these shadows were all strangely shaped. Swish, swish, swished, a weird mass of things suddenly jumped over, like a bolt of lightning. In Han Fei's eyes there was a familiar smell. At this time, in front of Han Fei's eyes, several invisible shadows appeared at the same time. Around Han Fei there were large and small space cracks, some thick and some thin. However, the power of these space cracks was not very strong. Han Fei flicked an invisible figure away with a flick of his finger. As soon as the black shadow was bounced away, Han Fei saw a big horn-like thing stabbing at him. And in the real world, it was a space crack that was instantly torn apart, slashing at Han Fei. Han Fei suddenly thought of something and asked in surprise, "Old Yuan, why do I feel that this is the way of the one-horned rhinoceros?" And just now, that thunderbolt soul-hooking claw looked a little like the thunder leopard. As soon as he said that, he twisted his body slightly and stepped on the ground, and the coiled turtle array appeared. Clang, clang, clang. Han Fei looked back, only to find that hundreds of spatial cracks had appeared at the same time. This technique was extremely similar to the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes. Suddenly, Han Fei noticed something. This divine demon sea was most likely connected to the territory of the Monster-Beast Alliance in the cage. However, for some reason, the people on the other side of the Sea of Gods and Demons seemed to be separated by an invisible spatial membrane. Both sides seemed to be able to sense each other and attack each other. It was just that they couldn't see each other. The old tortoise said, "You might have appeared in a superimposed space. It's as if someone is right next to you, and you can sense him, but you can't see him." This kind of mutual attack can only be launched through spatial rift. Han Fei asked in surprise. Since there's something wrong with this space, will it be broken? The old tortoise shook his head and said, theoretically, it won't. It's like two pieces of fish skin stuck together. The space here is even thicker than the space in other places, and it's not easy to break through. This white armor emperor, through this superimposed space, absorbed the power of the other side of the space and turned it into his own. He's quite a talent. Han Fei's lips twitched. Talent? All he did was steal something through the space, however. Han Fei had to be cautious. He hadn't been away from the Demon Beast Alliance for long. Now, he was surprised to find that the Demon Beast Alliance and the White Shell Royal City had a superimposed space. How could he not be worried? The White Armor Emperor was a real king. If he could really break into the cage from here, who in the entire cage could be his match? So, with a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water floated out. Thousands of blades started to cut the water. On the other side, in a forbidden place between the Demon Beast Alliance and the Forest of Horrors, a group of demon beasts was yelling at this moment. A rhinoceros roared, "Oh no! Someone is here. It must be a ferocious man from the outside world. Lei Bao, hurry to the island and inform the strong masters to come here." An ape yelled, "This man is very strong. We attacked him together, but he didn't even move. It seems that we can't shake him at all." A wolf cub shouted, "Look, there are more space cracks here. Is the man on the other side trying to break the cage?" "Wait." The ape yelled, and all the beasts gathered, only to find that the space cracks kept appearing and turning into a line of words in the void. It read, "I, the Bull Demon King, ask the little thunder leopard to find the old sheep. Hurry up." Immediately, the group of demon beasts was dumbfounded. The name of the Bull Demon King must resound like thunder in the ears. One person slaughtered 7 sea demons in a row. This was the fame he earned from killing, and it shook the entire Demon Beast Alliance. "Who doesn't know? Who doesn't know?" The wolf cub said. "Is he a liar? Why is the Bull Demon King on the other side of the cage?" The rhinoceros pondered and said, "How does he know that we have Thunder Leopard here? He can't see it, right?" The ape said, "If he is an outsider, he shouldn't know the sheep sovereign, right? Is it really the Bull Demon King?" Lei Bao said, "Forget it. I'll go back and call him. With the sheep sovereign's powerful means, he must be able to tell who this person is." Thousand Beast Island. Yang Shinji stood on the platform of the Great Rift Gorge, looking into the distance. This was Yang Shinji's habit, his ancestral habit of looking into the distance. Suddenly, a lightning mark flashed across the sky. It was the Thunder Leopard Sovereign flying over. Xiong Chaoshui roared, "Lightning! Why are you running in your own home?" Lightning said, "Old sheep, there's news about the Bull Demon King. He seems to have left the cage." "What? Huh! What's going on? Lightning, tell me." "Impossible. Didn't he go to the Undying City?" Old Sheep was also dumbfounded. "Why didn't I see anything?" Lightning said, "I just received news from the Space Valley. Someone has appeared in that place again. This time, it seems that the Bull Demon King wants to meet you, Old Sheep." The wild lion roared, "Impossible! Aren't they enemies in the Space Valley?" Old Sheep said, "Let's go and have a look." 1 hour passed. When Yang Shinji and the group of venerables arrived at the Space Valley, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He saw that someone had arrived. Calculating with his fingers, Han Fei grinned, stirred the void with the infinity water, and words appeared in the cage. "Old Sheep, it's me." Everyone gasped when they saw what it was. Nyodali wrote first, "Can you see this side?" Han Fei replied, "You are Nyodali. I can see your blurred form. If I'm not mistaken, the Wild Lion and Xiong Chaoshui are also here." The Wild Lion was about to write when Xiong Chaoshui shouted, "Ask me how to get out," with 2 pa-pa sounds. The 2 of them were directly slapped away by the old goat. Old Sheep's eyes flickered, and after a while, he confirmed, "It's him." Xiong Chaoshui quickly said, "Then ask him how to get out? I'm so anxious." The wild lion roared, "Ha ha ha! It seems that there is indeed a way out of the cage. Damn, I finally don't have to stay in the cage anymore." However, in the next moment, words appeared in the void. Han Fei said, "This is a forbidden secret realm connected to the Sea Demon King City outside. There are real kings here. Remember to be careful. Besides, the fake king of the Forest of Horrors has died, and 36 venerables have died. You can try to help them." On Old Sheep's side, the others looked at each other. "Are you kidding me? If there was such a big movement in the Forest of Horrors, how could we not know?" Old Sheep's body trembled, and he secretly calculated with his fingers. After several dozen breaths of time, he finally opened his eyes. The truth. The fake king of the Forest of Horrors has indeed disappeared. "What?" Xiong Chaoshui and the others exclaimed. The reason why the four major forces could be called the four major forces was naturally that they had fake kings. However, Old Sheep continued, the Forest of Horrors is easy to defend and difficult to attack. Their fake kings have never been of much use. Those half-kings are enough to give us a headache. Old Yang raised his brush and wrote, "How did you get out?" "The reason is complicated. By the way, later I need you to do me a favor. I will lead the king of the Sea Demon King City over. I need you to confront him for a while to create an opportunity for me. Remember, stay far away. Once you attack, escape immediately. The king is invincible." Old Sheep nodded. "Okay. Han Fei directly put away the infinity water. Although he could chat through this place, he couldn't open the cage yet. However, he couldn't open the cage yet, so there was no point in talking anymore. Besides, he was also taking risks by stirring the void in the Divine Demon Sea. If he attracted the attention of the White Armor Emperor and was discovered by him, he wouldn't be able to escape. After Han Fei disappeared, Niu Dali frowned. She, a peak-level intermediate venerable, couldn't say anything in this matter. The wild lion howled, "Old Sheep, why don't you ask him how he got out?" Xiong Chaoshui also said, "Old Sheep, since you've confirmed that that person is the Bull Demon King, is it that simple?" Old Sheep said leisurely, "The reason why he left in such a hurry is that the Bull Demon King is taking the risk to talk to us. Besides, it's useless to ask him now. When we can go out without you asking. Okay. Niu Dali, you retreat. The wild lion and Xiong Chaoshui stay with me. But the situation is not right. You retreat first. Let me see the Sea Demon King." First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1667. Han Fei didn't expect that he could talk to the people in the cages here. Of course, this kind of dialogue could only be carried out by those who were relatively strong. Those who were weak couldn't cut the space here through the void cracks at all, let alone cut the void cracks into the shape of words. After saying a few words to Old Goat, Han Fei stopped the communication. After all, cutting the void would also cause damage to the surrounding arrays. In the end, Han Fei sneered. What kind of place is the Divine Demon Sea? Perhaps, at the very beginning, there might really be experts in the cages who tried to escape from here. However, as the cage seal continued to strengthen, the possibility of that happening became extremely low. The Sea of Gods and Demons was indeed quite dangerous and challenging for explorers. Perhaps the White Armor Emperor used this method to cultivate when he was weak. Although they couldn't see each other through the spatial membrane, it was easy to tell whether they were friends or foes. Take Old Sheep for example. He was good at divination, so it was easy for him to tell whether they were friends or foes. Therefore, the sea demons that appeared in the Divine Demon Sea would be beaten by countless demon beasts of the Demon Beast Alliance. When Han Fei was in the Demon Beast Alliance, he only stayed in the Life and Death Gorge except for the 10,000 Beast Island. At that time, he didn't even go to the Forest of Horrors, so he didn't know that there was a place like the Space Valley. Thinking about this strange space, Han Fei suddenly remembered a multidimensional space theory. It was said that space was actually a way of stacking cosmic strings. You might feel like you were lying on a large lawn, but it might be a busy city or a battlefield. Han Fei had to figure out a way to enter the White Shell Royal City. After chatting with Old Sheep for a while, Han Fei had already come up with a plan. He could use Old Sheep to distract the White Armor Emperor, and then he would have a chance to loot the White Shell Royal City. There were many ways to destroy the arrays. Of course, Han Fei couldn't destroy the arrays left by the White Armor Emperor himself. There was so much violent energy here that he could easily corrode 1 or 2 core arrays. When one formation was broken, it caused the other formations to become unstable, and soon after, they became broken. Therefore, he only needed to touch part of the arrays. Han Fei reached out and stirred the desolation water in this space. Han Fei kept scouring the array seal with the power of the desolation water. After only a moment, under Han Fei's deliberate action, there was a buzzing sound, and this space was shaking. Buzz! Seeing this scene, Han Fei knew it was enough. Immediately, he used the Gemini Divine Incantation, leaving only the black mist body outside. Han Fei stepped out of the Divine Demon Sea and appeared at the crossroads of the Forbidden Realms again. Sure enough, only 2 seconds after Han Fei came out, the void shook, and a man in a silver-white battle suit appeared here. It was none other than the White Armor Emperor. The White Armor Emperor didn't notice Han Fei lurking on the stone wall and stepped into the Divine Demon Sea. The next moment, with a buzzing sound, the entrance to the Forbidden Area secret realm opened and Hai Tingley appeared. Following closely behind Hai Tingley were 2 high-level Venerable Realm Sea Demon powerhouses. One of them said, "Venerable Tingley, what happened?" Hai Tingley looked at the Divine Demon Sea ahead and said, "Our king is here. Follow me to the Divine Demon Sea." However, what Hai Tingley didn't know was that when he led his people to the Divine Demon Sea, Han Fei had already secretly left through the forbidden entrance. Out of the trial field of the forbidden area, Han Fei could really fly freely in the vast sea like a fish leaping in the vast sky like a bird flying freely in the sky. With a thought, Han Fei activated the nautical panorama. After a while, Han Fei found a mountain in the White Shell Royal City and an underwater crater covered by rocks and fire. There, a giant shell was nestled in the crater. As for the direction that the navigational multitude instrument was pointing at, it was pointing toward the giant shell. Han Fei cursed in his heart, "Why the F***CK did you set up a blockade on your own territory?" The reason why Han Fei wanted to go to the White Shell Royal City was to plunder. Who knew that the White Armor Emperor would cover the treasure place with a layer of seal in front of his own territory? With this layer of seal, as long as Han Fei broke through, even if he robbed the White Armor Emperor's treasure house, he might be caught and killed. Just as Han Fei was hesitating, the old turtle shouted in his mind, "Turtle Shell Sky Sealing Technique." Immediately, this space was sealed. Although it seemed normal, what happened here had no connection with the outside world. The old turtle said, "Hurry up and do it." To be honest, Han Fei hadn't visited a king's cave residence yet. Now that he had such a great opportunity, he had to rob the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei was impressed by the old turtle's means and courage. The moment Lao Yuan made his move, Han Fei knocked on the heavenly gate and pierced through the seal from top to bottom. With Han Fei's current strength, he had already become the strongest person below the king level in the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. It was true that the White Armor Emperor was powerful, but he would never have thought that someone would lure him away from his territory and rob his treasures while he was still in the city, breaking the seal with a spear. The world's end near Han Fei was very surprised. That giant shell was still alive? Han Fei had no time to think. He turned into a white fog and quickly got into the shell. And the black fog chose to retreat as soon as possible. It wasn't until Han Fei fell into the mouth of the giant shell that he found that he had entered a small world. This small world was hundreds of kilometers wide. Han Fei was stunned by its size. In this small world, countless resources were placed in an orderly manner, There were places to store high-quality demonic stones and ultra-quality demonic stones, a large number of weapon materials, the lowest of which were high-quality divine weapons, spiritual springs. Just like in his Forge the Universe, the spiritual spring was made into a river. The spirit awakening fluid also filled a large pool, like a small lake. In addition, there were all kinds of spiritual fruits, which were well sorted and piled up into a mountain. In fact, there were many things here that the White Armor Emperor didn't need. Most of them should be used by him to reward the people below. The old turtle's first reaction was, "Hurry up, take away all that pile of demonic heritage essence. The value of this thing is comparable to the earth-veined spring water. It can not only restore vitality but also contains a lot of chaotic energy. This pile must weigh millions of kilograms. Wow, it seems that there are also good things in this barbarian land." Han Fei didn't even ask what the demonic chi essence was. Wherever the old turtle pointed, he appeared with a swish and directly stuffed all the demonic chi essence into Forge the Universe. Then, ultra-quality demonic stones, high-quality demonic stones, spirit awakening fluid, divine weapon materials, spiritual springs, cultivation techniques, spiritual fruits, weapons. Anyway, Han Fei crazily stuffed everything that could be stuffed into Forge the Universe. Although Han Fei had a good time collecting, he was still speechless. The range of this 100-kilometer area was too large. Even though he was very fast, he only collected less than 1% of the resources in 100 seconds. When he saw the old turtle directly roll up countless resources with the black mist and run into Forge the Universe, Han Fei directly created a big void hand and grabbed. Han Fei also found that the old guy, the White Armor Emperor, had even cut off a large piece of the Blood Sea Divine Wood branch. Divine Demon Sea. When the White Armor Emperor appeared here, he could vaguely see a figure standing on the other side of this space with his naked eyes. This was not the first time the White Armor Emperor had met these people. It was just that from the beginning, the other party was hostile, and he couldn't talk at all. He also tried to break the space here. However, even if he broke the void with his king's power, he still couldn't penetrate this world. On the contrary, he would be shocked by the void power. The White Armor Emperor had tried here for hundreds of years but failed to break a trace of the seal. However, coming here was not without any gains. In the void here, a massive amount of violent energy would continuously gush out. The more this energy was accumulated, it could even make the energy of this divine demon sea as rich as a tide. Harvesting every few hundred years was of great benefit to the realm before becoming a king. Including Hai Tinglei and Changshui Qin, they didn't know that before the White Armor Emperor became a king, he relied on the power of the divine demon sea to grow rapidly. At this moment, Hai Tinglei stood respectfully behind the White Armor Emperor and said, "My king, there seems to be someone in the depths of the void, and he is quite strong." The White Armor Emperor said lightly, "Yes, but the space of the Earth realm cannot be broken. The reason why they appeared should be because the seal is aging. It seems that I need to repair it for a while. It will be done soon." But when the White Armor Emperor repaired the array, he saw words appear in the void. "Absorb the spiritual energy of my world. Don't let me find a chance to break the seal here. Otherwise I will kill you." This was the first time that Old Yang had taken the initiative to talk to the White Armor Emperor. They had met more than once or twice before. However, Old Yang knew clearly that the White Armor Emperor was an enemy. But the White Armor Emperor didn't know. This time, Old Yang said that he was a sea expansion realm powerhouse. The White Armor Emperor narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw the words written. Hai Tinglai's expression changed. The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly, stretched out his finger, and pointed at the void. "Then I hope you can break the seal as soon as possible." The speed of repairing the array seal was not slow. In fact, it could be said that it was very fast. It only took less than half an hour for it to be completed. In the cage, Xiong Chaoshui was still saying, "Old Yang, are we just going to say a few words and it's over? Didn't Brother Nyo ask us to stall for time, so that he could do something important? Old Yang said leisurely, it's about time to stall for time. If we deliberately stall for time, it will only make him suspicious. Otherwise, we can only go up and fight him. What, do you want to fight a king? Xiong Chaoshui said, I haven't fought before. What if I can last 2 rounds? Old Yang said lightly, how many rounds can you last in my hands? Xiong Chaoshui immediately scratched his head. I think I'd better forget it. After all, it has been half an hour. It should be enough. White Shell Kingdom. The White Armor Emperor came out of the Sea of Gods and Demons and said to Hai Tinglei, I don't know why the enemy's powerhouses have begun to pay attention to the Sea of Gods and Demons. Arrange for someone to be stationed here and go in to check every 3 to 5 days, in case of any accident. Hai Tinglei cupped his hands. Yes. While talking, the group of people left the Forbidden Land level trial field. As soon as the White Armor Emperor came out of the Sea of Gods and Demons, his expression suddenly changed. In an instant, he appeared above the volcano. Behind him, the giant shell appeared and closed its mouth. How dare you? Who dares to trespass my mansion? Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1668. Speaking of which, Han Fei had been collecting them non-stop. At first, Han Fei collected them with the absorption ability of Forge the Universe. Then, he worked with the old turtle and grabbed them with the giant hands. Then, he simply cast the sea-quelling painting and stored them inside. After looting 90% of this place, Han Fei wondered if the White Armor Emperor was still not back yet. He had to leave now. So, Han Fei bombarded with fist marks, trying to blow the giant shell away. However, Han Fei discovered, to his shock, that his power did not cause any damage to the gigantic shell when it disappeared in this space. The old turtle said, This is a space-type living shell. This is the big star shell. 4 void shellfish, their way of death was the destruction of their small world or the collapse of space. They could only be crushed by space magic. Regular power doesn't work on them. Is this the star shell? Can I take it away? The old turtle said unhurriedly, Yes, I can. But the premise is that you have to be outside. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Then why did I come in when I was outside just now? I could have just taken it away. The old turtle chuckled. How can it be so simple? At the level of the star shell, if one wanted to take it away, one would first need to grasp a certain amount of spatial technique. That way, one would be able to grab its body from the void. Secondly, do you want to use the star shell? You'll have to make it acknowledge you as its master first. Of course, if you want to destroy it, you can detonate the rest of the spiritual spring and demonic stones here. Although it might not be enough to destroy this small world, the explosion of the enormous power can damage this small world and make it impossible for it to grow. Han Fei's lips curled. Can a small world be damaged? The old turtle said, If the origin sea can be broken, why can't a small world? To be honest, it's not difficult for you to take away the star shell if you're a king. But you're not a king, so you can only rob it. Also, this star shell is not alive. It contains a bit of the White Armor Emperor's essence, blood, and soul. It's just covered by my turtle shell sky sealing technique. Otherwise, the White Armor Emperor would have known it. Han Fei instantly chuckled. You took so many things, and you only blew up one star shell? It was inappropriate. There are so many resources here. If we're going to bomb something, let's bomb Bai Bei Kingdom. While collecting some scattered resources, Han Fei chatted with the old turtle. At this moment, Han Fei's black fog body had found a protective umbrella and he could leave at any time. Suddenly, the old turtle said, The White Armor Emperor is back. With a thought, Han Fei threw out a spiritual spring and detonated it. Although Han Fei couldn't take the star shell away, there were still some leftover resources here, and he couldn't leave them to the White Armor Emperor. I've already robbed you, so why would I leave you some? Was this still considered a robbery? As soon as the White Armor Emperor left the forbidden area, he arrived above the star shell and broke the turtle shell sealing sky technique with one strike. In the next second, he rushed into the star shell. However, as soon as he entered, there was a loud explosion, and an illusory figure disappeared from this world. "Don't you dare leave, you thief!" Bang! Surrounding shell town, void barrier. Han Fei thought that he was fast enough. When the old turtle said that the White Armor Emperor was back, Han Fei only made a gesture of detonating the spiritual spring, but the White Armor Emperor caught up to him. Fortunately, the White Armor Emperor didn't really seal him at the critical moment. Bam! A deafening noise echoed in the Bai Bei Kingdom. Almost at the same time, everybody looked at the sky. The White Armor Emperor's voice echoed in the sky. "Hai Tinglei, seal the entire capital. No one is allowed to enter or leave the city." The White Armor Emperor was enraged. He only caught a glimpse of the person, but he didn't even see the person. He was a mighty monarch, yet someone had stolen countless of his treasures right under his nose, and even detonated a huge amount of resources. As a result, the star shell was in a complete mess. The remaining resources were less than 1% of the original amount. Those were the resources that he had accumulated for 10,000 years. They were gone just like that? Even if he was a king, he would have gone crazy, wouldn't he? And on the other side, Yukaling went through many difficulties and had several masters. Finally, with the technique left by the Fish Dragon King, she broke through the barrier of the Law Enforcer realm and reached the Explorer realm. After reaching the Explorer realm, Yukaling could immediately follow a new master. However, when she reached the Explorer realm, she already had a choice. She could actually go to the outside world or continue to cultivate in the royal city. For example, Lan Shuer, who was with Yukaling, also broke through the Explorer realm with the resources left by Han Fei. However, Lan Shuer's resources were not as good as Yukaling's, so she chose to continue to find a new master, and among sea demons, the existence of a master was actually a hierarchy. They could do whatever they wanted to do to you. Lan Shuer was used to it, so she didn't resist very much. Yukaling couldn't. She went to several masters because she refused to cooperate with them. Fortunately, she could be considered to have some talent in this realm. She wasn't very talented, but there were many people who knew Yukaling. At this time, Yukaling had basically settled down in the royal city. The death of the Fish Dragon King made Yukaling have no worries. As long as she cultivated slowly, with the cultivation method left by the Fish Dragon King, she might not be able to become a venerable, but it was entirely possible for her to reach the peak of the Explorer realm or even the semi-venerable realm. At this moment, Yukaling had just returned home from the trial field, and Lan Shuer came to visit her. Yukaling wondered, "Shuer, didn't you go to the trial?" Lan Shuer laughed and said, "Sister Kailing, all you know is to cultivate. Actually, sometimes it's a good choice to be flexible. I'm here to tell you that I'm about to break through to the intermediate Explorer realm." Yukaling looked at Lan Shuer in shock and said, "So fast?" Yukaling smiled charmingly and said, "You know, my master explored a secret realm half a month ago and got a lot of benefits. He gave me some, and the effect was excellent." Yukaling narrowed her eyes and said, "Humph. Your master is not a good person either." Yukaling exclaimed and said, "Sister Kaling, men can only think so much. In fact, we are not very good-looking. If we don't try our best to improve ourselves, it will be very difficult for us to rise. Right? I heard that the front line has started fighting again. A new human race has appeared at the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, a kind of ugly human race. The war has started again, and my master may have to go to war with the army. It will be much better to be with a prodigy than to go to the front line alone." Yukaling said, "I heard. But we haven't recruited any soldiers yet, right? I'm going to continue the trial." Sighs. Lan Shuer heaved a long sigh. "Sister Kaling, you are actually a little stubborn. If you can sacrifice your beauty or something with your talent, you will definitely grow much faster than me. Eukaling said, Got it. Go back. I'll think about it. After Lan Shuer walked away, Eukaling looked quietly in the direction that Lan Shuer left. After a while, she slowly exhaled, shook her head, and went back to cultivate. Boom! A loud explosion resounded throughout the entire White Bell's royal city. Then, the White Armor Emperor's angry voice spread everywhere. Hai Tinglei, immediately seal the entire royal city. No one is allowed to enter or leave the city. For a moment, countless people raised their eyebrows. Then, the White Shell royal city shook violently and didn't stop until hundreds of seconds later. Eukaling, like most ordinary people, went out to watch. Someone exclaimed, Hiss! This is the voice of our king. What exactly happened to make my king so angry? Someone was appalled. Be careful in the royal city. The law enforcer is sealing the city. He must be searching for something, right? Be careful and don't get yourselves caught. Someone sneered. Who cares what happened? What does it have to do with nobodies like us? Eukaling didn't know that a shadow was lurking in the shadow in a corner of her residence. The old turtle said, This chess piece is still alive. I have to say that you're quite lucky. Han Fei replied, You don't understand the sorrow of the nobodies. In order to become stronger, in order to rise, once they survive, they will do anything to survive. So, I don't think it's surprising that they survived these trials in White Shell Royal City. Then, Han Fei said, Old Yuan, the noise this time wasn't very loud. The explosion didn't break the star shell. The old turtle was lost for words. That's because you took away too many resources. Otherwise, the star shell would have been damaged. Han Fei grinned. That's fine. I haven't left the White Shell Royal City yet, have I? I'll detonate it again. The old turtle really didn't know what to say to Han Fei anymore. What a bold and daring man. Resources were not money, and he could spend as much as he wanted. He heard the old turtle say, When will this chess piece be moved? Han Fei thought for a moment and said, Let's wait. It's best that she doesn't know anything right now. I can cultivate for a few days while they search the royal city. I can come out when the heat is over. Old Yuan, keep an eye on Eukaling for me. Also, if the White Armor Emperor loosens up on this matter, tell me. Third, please vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1669. The search in Baibei Royal City lasted for 3 whole months. Han Fei was speechless. This White Armor Emperor was even more persistent than a human being. But then again, the house of a dignified King Tyr had been emptied by you. How could he not be stubborn? Even a minor character like Eukaling had been interrogated 3 times during this search, and her residence had also been swept clean. The old turtle even said that the White Armor Emperor removed the seals on everyone's residences and searched dozens of times. Han Fei felt lucky. Thanks to the demon purification pot, even a king couldn't find him. In a situation where even Eukaling didn't know he was hiding here, no one would be able to find him. Han Fei was still cultivating peacefully, but outside, the war between the Cloud Sea Divine Tree and the Baibei Royal City was in full swing. It had been almost 5 months since Han Fei left the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven gradually got used to the lifestyle in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. As soon as they went out, everyone used the teleportation array. Looking at the coordinates on the teleportation array, they could know the direction. The Yin-Yang Heavenly Human Clan was now involved in the 4 battlefield. Under Luo Xiaobai's deliberate arrangement, the human experts led the human hidden fishers to rotate battlefields one by one. At the same time, while learning the combat skills of the Waterwood Heaven, the Yin-Yang Heaven also provided them with combat skills and cooperation skills. In Luo Xiaobai's view, the human beings on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's side were relatively uncooperative. Even though the people here also had the 5 major professions of cultivation, perhaps because they had lived with other races for too long, they were a little unfamiliar with this kind of teamwork battle. During this period, the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven also had an exchange battle. From hidden fishers to explorers, they competed in the arena. In the end, a surprising result came out. The yin-yang heaven won the competition of all realms. Especially the law enforcers and explorers, the human race's combat power was completely revealed. Different from the humans of the yin-yang heaven, although there were 4 battlefields, they still had the Life Queen and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. However, those people on the Scattered Stars Island only had one island. Only by defending could they survive. If they couldn't defend, they would all die together. Therefore, the yin-yang heaven's people fought until the end, trading injury for injury. Their fearless fighting style moved many people from the waterwood heaven. It wasn't that there weren't any experts in the Shuemu sky, but that the living environments of the two sides were different. The yin-yang heaven's fighting style was even fiercer and crazier. Not only that, on the human side, the disciples of the Thug Academy also participated in the arena battle. In addition, a large group of descendants of aristocratic families grew up with a mountain of resources. Moreover, there was another very important point. Those who participated in the challenge tournament were basically the top prodigies of the aristocratic families and the 7 major sections. These people were the elites of the elite. If they lost, they would not be valued by the school and Han Fei. They would probably be scolded to death. This kind of battle run-in lasted for more than 3 months. In just over 3 months, the powerhouses of the yin-yang sky had appeared at any of the 4 battlefields. On the battlefield, the yin-yang sky warriors were really going all out. The resources of Shuemu sky were simply too abundant. In terms of spiritual qi, it was nearly twice as dense as the yin-yang heaven. Moreover, as long as he killed an enemy on the battlefield, all the spoils would belong to him. This was different from the Scattered Stars Island. After all, the discipline of the Scattered Stars Island was stronger. Although the spoils of war weren't handed over, they could still be exchanged for the resources they needed. The cost could be imagined. In the Shuemu sky, however, everything was much more free. After all, there were more races here. Many people went to the market to exchange for various resources after they got something. The 4 major races of the Shuemu sky, those insects, and the Sky Clan, had accumulated a lot of things. Therefore, on the streets, the people of the yin-yang heaven simply entered a shopping paradise. What? Want to forge weapons but don't have the materials? Exchange with the insects. What? Lack of spiritual fruits? Exchange with the demonic plant clan. What? Feel that your combat skills aren't enough? Exchange with the humans of the Shuemu sky. The troops of the yin-yang heaven mainly came from the Scattered Stars Island, the 1,000-star city, and the 36 towns. Those from the Scattered Stars Island also habitually went to the logistics division to exchange for resources. Over the years, the resources in the sea had been decreasing, and they couldn't go to sea at will. Therefore, in terms of obtaining resources, the channels were actually very narrow. As for the cultivators of the 1,000-star city and the 36 towns, they either went to the 1,000-star proving ground or were frequent visitors to the Level 3 fishery. Ordinary cultivators of the 1,000-star city rarely obtained the qualification to go to the Star Bead Small World. Even the children of the big clans had very few opportunities, and how many resources could ordinary cultivators of the 36 towns obtain in places like the Level 3 fishery? Therefore, when they came to the Shuemu sky, these people could be said to be like fish in water. The dark battlefield port, the most dangerous place in the Shuemu sky, was the place where the children of the big clans used to live. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Some heavenly talents could do whatever they wanted here. The Sea of Flames had always been a place of challenge, and it was almost occupied by the heavenly talents of the 7 major sections. Especially a young swordsman from the Heavenly Sword sect, who fought 10 alone. Ever since the people of the yin-yang heaven came, the sea demons of the same realm finally realized that these yin-yang heavenly humans were indeed very powerful. The humans of the Shuemu sky also completely accepted the humans of the Inyang heaven. Sometimes, the bugs couldn't help but sigh. The Inyang heavenly humans were really powerful in the same realm. For example, in a challenge in the Sea of Flames, a human of the Inyang heaven was locked in a fierce battle with a sea demon. In the end, the human was defeated. His body was pierced and his legs were cut off. Under such circumstances, the human hugged the sea demon and self-detonated. This scene was very shocking. This touching scene completely won the respect of the major clans of the Shuemu sky. The Shuemu sky also had something worthy of praise. The Shuemu sky's bow techniques were very powerful. The combat skills of the major clans were also very strange and difficult to guard against. Also, perhaps because they had been nourished by more spiritual energy, the speed of the Shuemu sky people was generally faster. Therefore, this time, the joint battle between the two sides directly ignited the flames of battle. The Baibei royal city constantly exerted pressure on the front line. At first, the Baibei royal city sent 3,000 law enforcers and 100,000 hidden fishers. However, the sea demons didn't take the initiative to attack. After all, they found that since the people of the Inyang heaven came, the battle had intensified. Some sea demons were even speechless. These animals were too king good at fighting. Some conflicts between the two sides were mostly at the level of testing. The sea demons also wanted to know how many humans of the Inyang heaven had come. In fact, the Shuemu sky had countless experts. The 250,000 soldiers of the Inyang heaven were scattered on various battlefields, so the increase in the number of people wasn't significant. However, this didn't stop the Baibei royal city from testing the waters. They set up small battlefields again and again, trying to test the strength of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, to see how many humans of the Inyang heaven had come as reinforcements. How exaggerated was it? The Flying Feather Tribe. Wushang Shui contacted Luo Xiaobai. The Baibei royal city is provoking us everywhere. Should we respond? Luo Xiaobai shook her head. No. This kind of probing had no meaning in the final battle. Slow down the pace of the battle and use a year to nibble away these people. Wushang Shui was surprised. Then you won't be able to show the power of the Inyang heaven human race. Maybe it will enhance the momentum of the Baibei royal city's army. Luo Xiaobai said lightly, momentum can be built up, but it will also dissipate quickly. Now is not the time to start a large-scale war. We still have to wait. Wushang Shui asked, wait for what? Wait for Han Fei to take action? Wushang Shui had already known that the body that Han Fei had left was just a projection clone. As for this clone, he had not participated in the battle the entire time. He had been sitting cross-legged the entire time. 1 year later, Han Fei had been cultivating in Forge the Universe for 20 years. He once wanted to consume all the chaotic energy. However, when he thought that the chaotic energy might be of great help to the breakthrough of the King Realm, he held back. Now, Han Fei was not in a hurry at all. If he didn't start a war, the people of the Inyang heaven could communicate more in the Shuemu sky. In this way, it could also promote the cultural intersection of the two worlds. Han Fei didn't need much time. He only needed another year or so. Now, Han Fei's arms had been tempered, and one of his legs was about to be tempered. This speed could be said to be extremely fast, and he didn't know how much energy he had consumed. Almost 10% of the energy-type resources that he looted from the White Armor Emperor had been consumed. After about 3 months in the outside world, the front line finally asked for reinforcements from the White Armor Emperor again. Last time, the White Armor Emperor sent reinforcements. Han Fei clearly knew that everyone was seen through by the White Armor Emperor. Yes, the White Armor Emperor didn't believe that anyone could escape from the White Armor Emperor in such a short time. He believed that the person who stole him was still in the capital. Therefore, Luo Xiaobai and the others thought that the probing army was an army to test the power of the Inyang heaven. But Han Fei knew that the White Armor Emperor was tempting him to leave. Although if he really left, the White Armor Emperor might not be able to find out, Han Fei didn't have to gamble. Wouldn't it be better to wait until he reached the Half-King realm? On this day, after Yu Keiling returned from the trial, Lan Shui came to visit again. Lan Shui said, "Sister Keiling, I heard that you are going to the front line to kill enemies?" Yu Keiling nodded. "I feel that my strength has greatly improved, and I need to stimulate it in actual combat to make a breakthrough in my realm. This time, I heard that 300 explorers, 5,000 law enforcers, and 200,000 soldiers will be selected. So, every explorer is very important. I can give it a try." Lan Shui immediately said, "Sister Keiling, do you know the situation in the front line? The last batch of people who went there were almost all killed. This time, although the number of soldiers was doubled and there were more than 200 explorers, but the previous time it only took them a year to defeat all of them. This time, I'm afraid it won't be any better, right?" Yu Keiling smiled faintly. "Shui, I'm different from you. People like us have to take a gamble." After Lan Shui left, Yu Keiling was about to eliminate the distractions and enter the state of cultivation. Suddenly, a voice sounded in her ear. "Yu Keiling, you'll die if you go there. You'd better stay." Yu Keiling was shocked and wanted to shout, but she felt that her soul trembled, and she seemed to be mute and couldn't speak. Don't make any unnecessary movement. Stay in the state of cultivation. I can feel your mental fluctuations. Who are you?" After the shock, Yu Keiling quickly responded. Han Fei grinned and said, "Me? I'm the Fish Dragon King. Why don't you remember? Your and Lan Shui's blood essence is still in my hands." Yu Keiling's pupils constricted. "Didn't you die?" Han Fei imitated the Fish Dragon King's tone and said, "Died? How could this Dragon King die so easily? That was just a show put on by this Dragon King." Yu Keiling was shocked. At the same time, there was a sense of despair. The Fish Dragon King was not dead, so she was not free. What should she do? As if knowing what Yu Keiling was thinking, Han Fei laughed. "Yu Keiling, don't say that I didn't help you. I can help you break through. But in the following time, you need to tell others that you are going to cultivate in seclusion to break through." Yu Keiling was not stupid. How could the Fish Dragon King be so good? Besides, the Fish Dragon King suddenly appeared and was so secretive. Did he do something? At this point, Yu Keiling was shocked. Could it be? The person Lord King is looking for is the Fish Dragon King? What did he do? How could he make Lord King so angry? First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1670. Han Fei's sudden appearance disrupted Yu Keiling's original plan. Yu Keiling didn't know that Han Fei was the Fish Dragon King. She just felt that the Fish Dragon King was not dead. This situation was very strange. Even if the Fish Dragon King pretended to be dead, what was his purpose? Why did he come to her at this time? Was it just to help her break through? Sure enough, Han Fei said, "I don't care what you are going to do in the future, but in the next 2 years, you must announce to the public that you are in seclusion." Yu Keiling said, "Master Dragon King, you should know that no matter what reason I have, unless I go out to fight, I must go to the trial field every month, right? If I don't go to the trial field in 4 months, it will be regarded as challenging the forbidden trial field. At that time, it will be mandatory." Han Fei thought to himself, "Damn it, how could I forget this part? It was because I didn't know this that I entered the forbidden trial field." Han Fei's heart did a flip. "Of course I know. By seclusion, I mean except for the trial field. You must be in seclusion all the time. In order to avoid some problems, I will do something to you." Yu Keiling felt that a massive soul had drilled into her head. Although she wanted to resist it with her soul power, she couldn't do anything in the face of that terrifying soul. Yu Keiling was horrified. "Master Dragon King, what are you doing?" Han Fei said lightly, As long as you are obedient, I will not only guarantee that you will make a breakthrough within 2 years, but also give you a batch of resources for your cultivation. Eukaling asked, Master Dragon King, what do you want to do? Han Fei said, You don't need to know what I want to do. You only need to know that no matter what I want to do, the only thing you can do is to obey. Otherwise, you will die. What could Eukaling do? At this moment, she had no choice at all. Other than being obedient, he was just being obedient. She was sure that the strange soul in her mind could easily control her and even kill her. Therefore, the secret that the Fish Dragon King was not dead and was still hiding in her mansion, she couldn't tell anyone. Eukaling's seclusion probably meant that the only person she cared about was Lan Shuer. During this period, Lan Shuer came once. Eukaling said that she felt that she was about to make a breakthrough, so she probably couldn't go to the front lines to fight. He needed to complete his breakthrough before considering going to the front lines. Although Lan Shuer was a little confused, she did not suspect anything. After all, she was too familiar with Eukaling. Back then, among the group of people in the Ice God Gorge, only he and Yu Kai were left. Therefore, she especially cherished this friendship. 20 days after Eukaling went into seclusion, the second batch of soldiers left Baibei Royal City. One day, the old turtle said, That white armor emperor still hasn't given up. Everyone who went out today was personally inspected by him. Although you shouldn't be afraid of being seen by him, this person's thoughts can be considered meticulous. Han Fei said with a smile, Good boy, so what if he's on guard? Even if I finish cultivating, do you think I plan to leave? The old turtle. Another year later, it was said that the White Shell capital city and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had engaged in 3 large-scale battles. Altogether, 7 or 8 venerables from both sides had perished. As for the explorers, more than 300 of them had died. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary soldiers had died. In the 9th month of Han Fei's seclusion here, the White Shell capital city relaxed the conditions for entering the White Shell capital city. In addition, a large number of law enforcers and explorers were brought back from the sea. Obviously, the White Shell capital city did not expect that the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would fight so hard this time. The frontline army was fighting fiercely, and the second batch of combat forces from the White Shell capital city had lost more than half. This finally made the White Armor Emperor feel distressed. And now, Han Fei was refining his spine. In Forge the Universe, 30% of the White Armor Emperor's energy resources had been consumed. Han Fei still had a head that hadn't been tempered, and there were still 7 vertebrae that hadn't been tempered. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor seemed to have given up looking for Han Fei. With the old turtle's soul power, he found some news. And this news was that the White Armor Emperor was preparing to launch a super war. Generally speaking, every 1,000 years, the White Shell capital city and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would launch a war, mainly to show the strength of both sides. Then, they would prove that they were still the overlords of their respective waters and the strongest enemy of the other party. This time, the White Armor Emperor was going to mobilize more than half of the White Shell capital city's manpower at once. Almost all the venerables were going to attack. The White Armor Emperor wanted to see for himself why the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had become stronger and stronger in the past 2 years. If they launched a war, some people might die. However, both sides were afraid that too many strong masters would die. Therefore, as long as they fought to a certain extent, they would stop for the time being. This time, the White Armor Emperor also had the same idea. Perhaps the Life Queen just wanted to see how her injuries were recovering now? Besides, the White Armor Emperor was also wondering if the person who sneaked into the White Shell capital city had anything to do with the Life Queen. Or, was that person related to the people on the other side of the Sea of Gods and Demons? This time, the number of people participating in the war was even more, and it was no longer voluntary. Eukaling was selected to participate in the war. After only 2 months of preparation, the whole army was ready to set off. However, there were still 11 skulls in Han Fei's body that hadn't been tempered. This made Han Fei very worried. He knew that he had to take action. Although he was still a little bit away from becoming a half-king, compared to this Millennium War, he absolutely couldn't let these people really go all out. Han Fei knew that in every Millennium War, at least a dozen venerables would die. They wouldn't stop. And even then, venerable-level powerhouses died. Because of the restraint of the kings, the number of venerables who died was relatively small. As for the death of ordinary powerhouses, the White Armor Emperor didn't care at all. Thus, the number of people who perished was innumerable. Han Fei still remembered that Shu Xiaoman once told him that there was a war that broke out, and nearly 1 million insects died because of a sneak attack by a strong powerhouse. The Water and Wood Heavenly Insect Queen suffered great losses, and the overall strength of the insect clan directly dropped by several realms. Han Fei pondered. A total of 250,000 people from the Yin-Yang Heaven came. In a war of this level, if they really fought, even if they didn't lose 100,000 people, they would lose at least 70 to 80,000. But these people were all seeded players of the Yin-Yang Heaven. 70 to 80,000 people died? Han Fei couldn't accept this at all. So, Han Fei came out of seclusion. The old turtle said, "You are still in the capital. If you take action now, the White Armor Emperor will definitely seal the capital again. At that time, he won't let you go even if you have to risk your life." Han Fei grinned and said, "It doesn't matter. As long as he can't catch me, so what if I'm trapped here? This is a war between races. I'm on the side of the human race and the sea demons are my natural enemies. If the White Armor Emperor wants to fight, he has to ask me first." On this day, Chang Shui-Qin personally presided over the battle, Hai Tinglei supervised the battle, and the 2 demi-kings of the White Shell Royal City sent troops at the same time. Hai Tinglei ordered, "All participants of the White Shell Royal City, gather outside the Sky Trial Field within half an hour. Anyone who disobeys the order will be executed." The Sky Trial Field was located above the White Shell Royal City, and was basically always guarded by sea demon beasts. Under Hai Tinglei's order, the entire White Shell Royal City was filled with people, and water streaks cut through the bottom of the sea, rushing to the trial field. Yu Kailing said, "Master Dragon King, I have to go. Otherwise, someone will definitely notice that something is wrong." Han Fei smiled. "Wait a minute." Yu Kailing was shocked. "What does the Fish Dragon King want to do?" Yu Kailing asked. "Master Dragon King, what do you want to do?" Han Fei grinned. "Half an hour is still early. It's not even half an hour yet. What's the hurry? We can go after half an hour." In a moment, as many as 50,000 people had gathered outside the Sky Trial Field within half an hour. There were only 100,000 people in the entire White Shell Royal City. Now, 50,000 people had gathered. What did that mean? These 50,000 soldiers were more than 10 times stronger than the previous time. Even now, there were still people on their way. One after another, more than 10,000 people came. This was also the number of troops sent by the White Shell Royal City this time. The reason why they didn't send all of them was that they were afraid that someone would sneak attack them. A strong master must have such worries. Of course, it didn't matter if the White Armor Emperor didn't care. If he was like Xuefan, who could sacrifice the entire Blood Sea Divine Wood City in order to become a king. If he had this courage, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would have been broken long ago. Suddenly Han Fei said, "Go. Find Lan Shuer. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Try to get close to the strong masters." Yu Kailing was dumbfounded, but she didn't think much. She guessed that no matter how strong Han Fei was, he was only a demi-venerable at this moment, and it was impossible for him to be faster. No one could break through to the venerable realm in just a few years. Besides, even if Han Fei broke through to the venerable realm, so what? A mere venerable couldn't shake so many venerables of the White Shell Royal City. Besides, there was a king here. Han Fei couldn't do anything, could he? After a while, Yu Keiling found Lan Shuer. When he saw Yu Keiling, Lan Shuer's master, a handsome half-mermaid, grinned and said, "Huh? You actually made a breakthrough with your own strength? Not bad. However, Yu Keiling, you'd better stay with me this time. This is the Millennium Battle. Without my protection, you'd better not be sent out to fight in the arena." Yu Keiling frowned and remembered Han Fei's words in her heart. Stay close to the strong masters. And here, there happened to be a venerable standing in front of a group of heavenly talents. Yu Keiling grunted softly, which made Lan Shuer raise her eyebrows. Has Yu Keiling changed her personality? Lan Shuer's master was also stunned, but then he licked the corner of his mouth and thought to himself, these women from outside are really afraid of death. If it weren't for the Millennium Battle, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to defeat this woman. A giant shell appeared in the sky. The White Armor Emperor stood on the giant shell, his hands behind his back. He said, "Soldiers of the royal city. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days and used in 1 day. The Millennium Battle is close at hand. In this battle, some people will rise and some will fall. This is a test for your month-by-month trial. In this battle, if you survive, it will be the pride of your life. Everyone." The White Armor Emperor suddenly lowered his head, and there was a slight space vibration. However, in the past 2 years, the White Armor Emperor had been extremely vigilant. Who dared to break the void when he was giving a speech? When the White Armor Emperor looked down, he saw a familiar face, who had appeared in the crowd at some point. Han Fei? However, Han Fei raised his head and grinned at the White Armor Emperor. Bam! Second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1671. BM Rumble. Han Fei's appearance made the White Armor Emperor realize that something was wrong. He controlled the field with the Great Tao, ready to control Han Fei in an instant. However, in all directions, dozens of Han Fei suddenly appeared. The moment Han Fei grinned, countless people felt that a crisis was coming. It was as if the god of death was calling. Only a small number of powerful people knew to mobilize all their strength to resist and defend. And most people didn't even have time to react. Boom, boom, dozens of earth-shaking roars burst out in a row, including those who had planned to stay in the White Shell Royal City. Han Fei had already prepared the void descent technique, so he naturally wouldn't let go of those places that were almost empty. Han Fei felt that since he had destroyed the White Shell Royal City, he couldn't let go of half of the rubble that was intact. The White Armor Emperor's speed was very fast. He suppressed all directions with one shell. He blocked the 3 figures of Han Fei. However, there were still some who were a little far away, so he couldn't make it in time. The terrifying explosion instantly swept across the White Shell Royal City. Because this explosion came too fast, Hai Tinglei and Changshui Qin only had time to protect some people. Most of the venerables could protect even fewer people. Rumble, the entire sea surface was bulging. God knew how many resources Han Fei had exploded. Anyway, about half of the energy resources in the White Armor Emperor's shell had been exploded by Han Fei. And there were still about 10% of the resources left on Han Fei. This 10% was enough for Han Fei to temper to the Half-King realm. Resources, both left and right, were for use. Although this explosion didn't use the resources on himself, it saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of people from the Shuemu Heaven and the Yinyang Heaven. Otherwise, if these experts were to rush over to Shuemu Heaven's side and really start the battle of 1,000 years, who knew how many people would die? The White Armor Emperor's shell flew across the sky, resisting most of the explosive power with its own strength. The shell swallowed nearly half of the explosive power. However, there were too many resources exploded. The moment he saw Han Fei, the White Armor Emperor knew that all of this was Han Fei's doing. His treasure house was also stolen by Han Fei. However, the White Armor Emperor was shocked. Didn't Han Fei die in Shui Fan's heavenly tribulation? How could he still be alive? Unfortunately, he had no time to think about it now. He had led his troops out, but at this moment, Baibei Royal City had been destroyed. Almost half of the elite army of 100,000 soldiers were killed in an instant. In this explosion, even a few of Han Fei's clones failed to detonate and shake the surrounding area. However, they had also wiped out the White Shell Kingdom's army of more than 30,000 to nearly 40,000 soldiers. These more than 30,000 sea demons were not hidden fishers. In the Baibei Royal City, there were no sea demons at the level of hidden fisher. Some of them were at least at the law enforcer realm. Han Fei thought that he could at least annihilate the 50,000 troops of the White Armor Emperor. But now it seemed that he was still a little short. At that moment, even a king like the White Armor Emperor was a little dazed, let alone the others. For a moment, countless people couldn't even cry out in pain. That was because they were directly crushed by the terrifying power. In an instant, they were completely destroyed. Tens of thousands of people were seriously injured by the explosion. Fortunately, this time, the White Armor Emperor almost took most of the venerables with him. The three half-kings took action together, and nearly 80 venerables and hundreds of half-venerables took action at the same time to protect half of the troops of the White Shell Kingdom. Yukaling was dumbfounded. Although she was protected by the venerables, she still hit the bottom of the sea heavily. After getting up, looking at the sea demons around her who had similar expressions as her, Yukaling was relieved. Just now, she failed to control her expression and almost exposed herself. She knew that this explosion was caused by the Fish Dragon King, and she was more certain that the Fish Dragon King might be the person the White Armor Emperor was looking for. Besides, such an explosion felt very familiar to her. When she was in the Ice God Gorge, she seemed to have encountered such an explosion. At that moment, Yukaling had a great suspicion about the identity of the Fish Dragon King. It seemed that after returning from the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, the Fish Dragon King had changed. At that time, she told herself several times that maybe this was the real Fish Dragon King, and the previous ones were all illusions. But now, Yukaling was almost certain that this Fish Dragon King was fake. From the time in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, it was already fake. She had reason to suspect that the Fish Dragon King had been possessed in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Unfortunately, she didn't recognize it at that time, and now she regretted it. Seeing so many people die, Yukaling's mind went blank. Tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheek. Why was she so afraid of death? Was he the one who caused all of this? If she hadn't cooperated with the Fish Dragon King from the beginning, would there have been no such explosion? The White Armor Emperor took action immediately. Unfortunately, dozens of Han Fei's clones suddenly descended and all detonated. Unfortunately, none of them was Han Fei's real body. If Han Fei was right in front of her, why couldn't she recognize Han Fei? Ho! The White Armor Emperor roared. Everyone, stand where you are and let me examine you one by one. Han Fei hid in Forge the Universe and didn't come out. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei said, Old Yuan, deprive Yukaling of her memories in the past year. The old turtle said, Why? Do you still want to use her now? Han Fei said, Although she is an enemy, this woman has a good character. I used her because when two armies confront each other, they will do anything. But now she has been used. Even if I want to kill her in the future, I will do it on the battlefield. The old turtle said, The noise here is too big. The Shuemu heaven will definitely take action. Will anyone come to save you? There were only 100,000 people in the White Shell Kingdom. Excluding those who had gone to the battle and those who had just been killed by Han Fei. Now there were only 50,000 people left. The White Armor Emperor was exasperated to the extreme. If he wanted to investigate them one by one. In fact, it wouldn't take long. If he could find Han Fei by interrogating them one by one. The White Armor Emperor was willing to give it a try. On the other side, on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, the half-projection left by Han Fei suddenly jumped up from sitting cross-legged and shouted, All armies, go to war. Old Jiang was taken aback. What the hell? Did you just come back to life? Old Jiang asked. What happened? What do you mean by all armies going to war? Han Fei said, Old Jiang, trust me. Although I can't feel the specific situation of my real body, I can feel that now it's time for the whole army to go to war. Old Jiang's face turned serious. He probably knew that something must have happened to Han Fei's real body. He immediately said, I'll inform Xiaobai and the ancestral patriarch. You go find tranquility. In the Waterwood Divine Palace, the Life Queen, who was watering the flowers, suddenly raised her head and looked at the distant territory. The next moment, the Life Queen disappeared from the Divine Palace. Of course, the Life Queen felt such a violent shock. However, a moment later, when the Life Queen was more than 800,000 kilometers away from the White Shell Kingdom, she felt the faint shock waves coming from the void and saw the terrifying scene where the White Shell Kingdom was located. She couldn't help but be shocked. The Life Queen directly returned to the Shuemu heaven. She didn't know Han Fei's situation. However, this was obviously not a good time to save him. Besides, she didn't feel that Han Fei had released tranquility and the venerable token. If Han Fei was really in danger, she would at least know this. Therefore, the Life Queen returned to the Shuemu heaven as soon as possible. After a moment, Luo Xiaobai had just heard the news from Old Jiang when she heard the Life Queen's voice from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The 72 venerables of the Shuemu heaven, attack quickly and prepare for a full-scale attack. Luo Xiaobai and Old Jiang suddenly raised their heads and were stunned by the Life Queen's voice. But in the next moment, a phantom of the Life Queen appeared directly in front of Luo Xiaobai. It's time to ask the people of the Yinyang heaven to attack. Now is the time for war. Although Luo Xiaobai knew that the most important thing now was to organize the army, she still asked, Your Majesty, what happened? The Life Queen said leisurely, Han Fei blew up the White Shell Kingdom. Luo Xiaobai, Old Jiang, everyone. Luo Xiaobai's head was buzzing. What did she mean by Han Fei blew up the White Shell Kingdom? Was it a joke? If the White Shell Kingdom could have been blown up, why would they still fight this war? However, reason made Luo Xiaobai quickly come back to herself, and she quickly asked, Your Majesty, is Han Fei in danger? Do we need to rescue him? Yes, Luo Xiaobai asked the second time-wasting question. At that time, the Life Queen shook her head. He shouldn't be in danger for the time being. Even if he is, there's nothing you can do. Now launch a full-scale battle and kill the sea demons on the periphery of the Shuemu heaven. Only then can the White Shell Kingdom be forced to send help. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Understood. Thank you, Your Majesty. Luo Xiaobai bowed and turned around. Ancestor, please inform all the venerables of the Yinyang heaven that we will begin to organize the army in the Dark War port. The voice of Sa Ya was heard saying leisurely, Leave it to me. A great war was about to break out, but Han Fei hid in Forge the Universe and focused on cultivation. He was only 11 bones away from becoming a demi-king. His whole body had been tempered, and now only his head was left. The demi-king realm was close at hand. As long as the White Armor Emperor didn't come out, he would cultivate. But Han Fei didn't know that people could go crazy, and sometimes kings. The White Armor Emperor was now on the verge of going crazy. The third update. Please vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1672. Waterwood Heaven. The 4 clans of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree launched a general attack at the same time. At this moment, the Life Queen slaughtered the 6 sea demon venerables of the Dark War port alone, causing the Great Tao to crack and blood to pour down. All 72 Cloud Sea Divine Tree venerables launched attacks on the 4 battlefields at the same time. However, venerables were much weaker than kings after all. Except for the Dark War port, only 4 venerables died on the 3 battlefield. One of them was killed by the Thug Patriarch. By this time, the ultimate battle had been single-handedly led by the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's side. Therefore, the Life Queen didn't hesitate to attack. If she could, she would prefer to sweep all the sea demon venerables on the 4 battlefields immediately. Unfortunately, this obviously wouldn't work. Once a venerable died, a crack would appear in the sky, causing a rain of blood to fall for millions of kilometers. In this way, it would alert the enemy. The sea demon venerables were not fools. They chose to escape as soon as possible. In the 8 million kilometer sea area of the Waterwood Heaven, the venerables scattered and fled into the void. Even if the kings chased after them, they could only catch up with 1 or 2 of them. The Life Queen didn't chase after them. She needed to force the White Armor Emperor to take action. If the White Armor Emperor took action, he wouldn't have time to care about the White Shell Royal City, so Han Fei would be out of danger. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree venerables all took action, causing the venerables and explorers of the White Shell Royal City to flee. If they didn't flee now, wouldn't they be wiped out? Therefore, in this battle, they took advantage of the victory to chase after the enemy. On each of the 4 battlefields there were Yin-Yang heavenly humans. As for how to distinguish the people from the Yin-Yang heaven, just look at whether they were using fishing boats. Although fishing boats were slower than escaping at full speed, it was more energy efficient. Therefore, whenever there were fishing boats in the sky, there would be Sky Clan members on them. Those big birds looked for people to chat with while hitching a ride. Luo Xiaobai led an army to chase after them outside the Dark War port. This kind of pursuit didn't need too many arrangements. Everyone was fighting crazily. Those sea demons that were fleeing in panic were all real resources. In the past 3 years, the Yin-Yang heavenly human tribe had been embroiled in a series of battles. The previous 250,000 people had experienced 3 to 5 battles. Although many of them had gained a lot, there were also many who had died. Nearly 20,000 people had died in the battlefield of the Waterwood Sky. Casualty rate? It was close to 10%. Of course, with such a high casualty rate, countless people were making breakthroughs. In less than 3 years, almost everyone in Yin-Yang Sky had advanced by 2 small realms. Out of 250,000 people, more than 10,000 people had advanced to become law enforcers. This ratio? The 4 great races of the Waterwood Sky were all dumbfounded. Although a hidden fisher was promoted to a law enforcer, it wasn't particularly difficult, but the speed of his growth was simply inconceivable. However, they did not know that this was the first time the humans of the Yin-Yang heaven had used their resources so recklessly. As long as I have a battle record? That meant there would be resources? That meant there was room for growth. In addition to these more than 10,000 people who had advanced to become law enforcers, nearly 50,000 people had become peak-level hidden fishers. This was much stronger than when they fought on the Scattered Stars Island. In the Scattered Stars Island? Want to grow? That required a tedious exchange of resources. After all, the resources of the entire Yin-Yang heaven were not as good as those of the Waterwood Sky. The Wall of Death's absorption of energy from both sides was also unbalanced. And, when they were on the Scattered Stars Island, the human race had to guard the Scattered Stars Island while cultivating. Although the situation was much better after Han Fei liberated the Scattered Stars Island. Most people could also get a lot of resources as long as they dared to fight. However, compared with the resources of the Waterwood Sky, it was still incomparable. At this moment, this group of people who came to the Waterwood Sky knew very well that they had made the right choice to follow Han Fei here. The communication between the 2 worlds allowed them to integrate different cultures. Not only did they learn each other's combat skills and methods, but it was also of great help to their own consciousness and awareness. Therefore, in the past 3 years, almost everyone had advanced by 1 or 2 small realms. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renquang were flying across the void, sniping a semi-venerable. At this moment, the strength of these 3 people could already defeat a semi-venerable. Zhang Xuanyu's spear overlapped, and the long spear in his hand turned into nothingness. A soul spear directly blasted the semi-venerable, causing blood to spurt out of his eyes, nose, and mouth. A shadow appeared behind Lu Renkuang. Like a demon king devouring people, it cut off the void and bit off one of the semi-venerable's arms. Luo Xiaobai set up a spiritual plant array, making the semi-venerable completely lost. The skin and internal organs of the semi-venerable sea demon were quickly parasitized. The blood he vomited all turned into green and fine algae and moss. Immediately afterward, his body began to rot rapidly as if it had become moldy. In the end, his vitality was completely devoured. Withdrawing his attack, Zhang Xuanyu said, "Xiaobai, I still can't believe it. Han Fei, did you really blow up a king's nest?" Lu Renkuang's face trembled. "Yes. He's still a king. Isn't it a shame that he was successfully ambushed?" Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes at the two of them. "Do you want him to lose?" Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, "Of course not. I just feel that we didn't even get to participate in such an exciting thing. It's such a waste." Luo Xiaobai said lightly, "Okay, try to hunt more experts. The Life Queen and the Venerables will at most attack the Venerable Sea Demons. They won't attack those below the Venerable Realm. These sea demons are all whetstones for the 4 races of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. They are also chasing us crazily. We can't fall behind. Take advantage of this opportunity to plunder a lot of resources and come back." Lu Renkuang muttered, "I only took a little bit of the Zhang family's resources. I really should get more." Luo Xiaobai glared at Lu Renkuang. "You can only train yourself if you fight for them yourself. How can you become a strong expert if you pick up other people's resources?" Zhang Xuanyu said, Hey. Okay, at least we took a little bit. The 3 of us combined are enough to cultivate to the semi-venerable realm. As for becoming a venerable, it's still too early. On the day of the explosion of the Baibei royal city, more than a dozen venerables escaped from the front line. "King, the Life Queen broke the rules and took action personally. We were really no match for them. If we hadn't run fast, we would have been killed on the spot. King, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree launched an all-out attack on us. The front lines suffered heavy casualties. We can't fight anymore." The White Armor Emperor's eyes were cold as he shouted coldly, "Has the army retreated?" A venerable said, "The army has retreated. Although the Life Queen attacked us, she didn't attack the explorers. Therefore, the front line is currently fighting and retreating. But even so, our retreat will definitely cause a great blow to the morale of the front line." The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly. "Mu Wuhua doesn't need to attack ordinary people. He only needs to wipe out the power of the Venerables. The entire 8 million kilometers of the Shuemu heaven has become a whetstone for the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." A venerable said, "But my king, if we retreat like this, we will lose at least 30% of our frontline soldiers. How could the White Armor Emperor not know the terrible consequences if he didn't appear? If there was no king, the morale of the army would collapse, which was a big taboo." However, what was even more important than the collapse of the morale of the frontline troops was that Han Fei was still alive in the eyes of the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei alone was worth thousands of soldiers and horses. Back then, during Xuefan's heavenly tribulation, the White Armor Emperor clearly knew that those 2 people both had the potential to become kings. Xuefan was right. He couldn't allow him to exist, but he dared to allow Han Fei to exist? Both of them were monstrous characters. Now, one of them had died, and Han Fei was still alive. This meant that when Han Fei transcended his heavenly tribulation in the future, there was almost no reason for him to fail. Therefore, at this moment, the White Armor Emperor didn't immediately respond to the Life Queen's attack. Instead, he investigated the White Shell Royal City one by one. It was also because of Han Fei's explosion that many people in the White Shell Royal City faced the White Armor Emperor head-on for the first time. One could imagine the anxiety and fear in their hearts. For example, Yukaling was extremely nervous when she saw the White Armor Emperor for the first time. The White Armor Emperor's eyes flashed with a strange halo. He didn't need to ask questions at all. Instead, he directly probed Yukaling's soul. The White Armor Emperor said, "Open your mind. Don't resist." "Yes, my king." In Forge the Universe, the old turtle said in surprise, "It seems that this White Armor Emperor really hates you. Even if he has to peep at other people's souls one by one, he will catch you. You should know that while peeping at souls, he will also see a lot of memories that he shouldn't see. The more he sees, the worse it will be for him. It's fortunate that he's a king tier. Otherwise, his brain would have been destroyed by 50,000 people." Han Fei frowned and said, "Are you sure you erased Yukaling's memories? Otherwise, if the White Armor Emperor sees something wrong, we will be in danger." The old turtle said with a smile, "Don't worry. No matter how powerful the White Armor Emperor is, he only has the soul power of the Pioneer Sea realm. He can't see anything wrong. Just focus on your cultivation. According to his speed, the number of people he can check every day is limited. He won't be able to check all of them in less than a month." Han Fei immediately said in delight, "Oh? Are you sure it will take him so long?" The old turtle said, "If he really wants to check them one by one, if he watches them too fast, his soul will accept too many memories and become confused." "That's good." 3 months later, Han Fei had already tempered the last piece of his skull. But it was this area that was extremely difficult. This piece of bone affected all the bones in his body. Once this bone was tempered, Han Fei would become a king. Therefore, he didn't dare to neglect it all. When the White Armor Emperor's 10% energy resource was less than 1/3 left, suddenly, with a bang, Han Fei's body exploded. However, a magical scene appeared. Han Fei's body was separated into dozens of pieces, and his head rolled on the ground, but his eyes were still blinking. Wow! So, this is the indestructible body? Chapter 1673. Crack, crack, crack. Han Fei's shattered body trembled, quickly flew together, and reassembled. Immediately afterward, Han Fei felt that there seemed to be a powerful force in his body. When he looked at the demon purification pot, information popped up in his eyes. Owner Han Fei level greater than 89, Semi-King. Chaotic energy 957, spiritual power 189696, perception range greater than 78,000 kilometers, power greater than 20,971 waves. First spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78. Second spiritual beast King Sparrow, level 72, main art void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. Han Fei took a deep breath. He knew that he would be very powerful when he became a semi-king, but he never thought that the gap of a small level could make him grow so much. His soul power had increased by more than 40,000 points. Even if the fused soul was replenishing his body, the growth this time was too much. Besides, Han Fei's perception range had also increased significantly, reaching a terrifying level of 80,000 kilometers. This also meant that he could sense everything within an area of 80,000 kilometers. If his perception range was 80,000 kilometers, at this moment, Han Fei could see at least 300,000 to 500,000 kilometers away by deliberately looking through the void. In addition to the growth of his spiritual power, Han Fei's strength had increased by more than 4,800 waves. When he first came to the Shuemu heaven, his strength was only about 70 waves. But now it was completely different from before. The breakthrough of a level increased his strength by 4,800 waves, which was already comparable to the full strength of an advanced venerable. With such power, Han Fei could no longer be regarded as a normal venerable, or even a normal demi-king realm cultivator. Under such extreme combat power, Han Fei doubted whether he could exert the combat power of a king-level cultivator now. Han Fei said, Old Yuan, how many waves does a pioneer sea state cultivator have? I mean when he just entered the pioneer sea state. The old turtle knew that Han Fei's strength had greatly improved, so he didn't hide it. He said straightforwardly, generally speaking, about 50,000 waves. When you pass the King Tribulation and open up the Origin Sea, your life level will change once. This is the benefit you get from the Heavenly Tribulation. Of course, this level of life couldn't be eternal. For example, the vitality of an Exalt Realm expert would normally begin to decline after 5,000 years, and he would practically die after 10,000 years. As a king, he could live for hundreds of thousands of years. The gap between a monarch and a venerable was huge. The growth of a king's power wasn't that exaggerated. Normally, a slightly more outstanding king's power would grow by around 50,000 waves. No matter how weak they are, there are no kings with less than 40,000 waves of strength. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What was your strength when you expanded the sea?" The old turtle said, "Naturally, they are much stronger than the so-called chosen. At that time, I had close to 80,000 waves of power, which could be said to be 1 in 10,000. Right now, even if you transcend the tribulation and change your life level, I'm afraid you'll only be about the same as me." "How much?" Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. "Are you kidding me? King of Kings 80,000 waves, just how strong was that?" "That was 4 times higher than the pseudo-monarch realm." The old turtle said, "Don't be too surprised. I had the power of 80,000 waves when I opened the sea, but it doesn't mean that everyone can have such power. Ordinary people can only have about 50,000 waves." Han Fei was speechless. "What? Do you think 50,000 waves is too little or something?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What about when you were a half-king?" The old turtle said unhurriedly, "A half-king. Cough, about 25,000 waves. I slept for 10,000 years before I transcended the tribulation. That's already the limit of what I can sleep for. As for you, although you are indeed talented, your life level is lower. I guess you'll be about the same as me after you expand the sea." Han Fei was lost for words. "I have double heavenly veins." The old turtle said, "So what? You have a bloodline made of my Tao. So, your aptitude is only unparalleled in this sea. Maybe you can reach the peak of the sea for a while in the expansion sea. However, if you want to go further and become a real top heavenly talent, I'm afraid you'll have to improve your life level." Han Fei was surprised. "Life level can also be improved?" The old turtle said unhurriedly, "Of course. Every time you transcend the King Tribulation, your life will be improved once. There is a huge difference between a king and a venerable. Otherwise, how can your strength double after you transcend the heavenly tribulation? This is the result of the change in your life level." Han Fei's eyes flickered. So, at the end of cultivation, someone would be called a god? Now, Han Fei didn't care about his life level. He had to become a king first. Only when he became a king would his life level change. In addition to his own improvement, Han Fei was surprised that the Emperor Sparrow had made another 2 breakthroughs in the past 3 years. He had to admit that the Emperor Sparrow had the fastest improvement of any creature Han Fei had ever seen. 3 days later, 3 months had passed outside Forge the Universe. Han Fei couldn't wait to go out, but the White Armor Emperor still had no intention of leaving. This made Han Fei speechless. Didn't the old turtle say it had been more than a month? What was the meaning of this guy dawdling for more than 3 months? Han Fei was bored. Since he didn't plan to go out, he spent some time swallowing dragon bones. It wasn't until Han Fei swallowed more than 50 dragon bones and the chaotic energy had exceeded 1,000 that the White Armor Emperor finally made a move. And this movement gave Han Fei quite a fright. On this day, an incomparably huge seashell suddenly opened its mouth. The White Armor Emperor roared, "I am the White Armor Emperor, the king of the White Shell. Because the experts of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree are hiding in the capital. Now, anyone below the venerable level, come into my shell. Han Fei was surprised. Is he crazy? He doesn't even want his home anymore? He's going to cut off all means of retreat. Han Fei was horrified. Even if there were 50,000 people left in the White Shell capital, so what? How could he underestimate the 50,000 combat power? Although his previous explosion destroyed the White Shell capital, the ruins were still there, and it wasn't difficult to rebuild it. But now, just because you said you don't want it anymore, you want to abandon an entire city and take everyone with you? Even the White Armor Emperor himself didn't expect that he would have such courage one day. It was not that Han Fei didn't want to go, but because Forge the Universe was right there. The shell looked like the White Armor Emperor's origin sea or body. How could Han Fei dare to enter such a thing? Although Han Fei had reached the level of a half-king, he was not a king. Even if his power at his peak might be comparable to that of a king, so what? Power was power, and the Tao was the Tao. The Tao could be crushed. The old turtle said, normally, the origin sea won't be exposed to the outside world. Therefore, that giant shell is either his main body, his domain, or his companion spirit. Once you enter it, your stealth ability may be ineffective. Han Fei said, he's quite smart. This way, he can indeed avoid me and take all his people away. However, the old turtle said unhurriedly, maybe it's not that simple. Don't you think the White Shell capital is too small? The old turtle asked, you can blow up the White Shell capital, but what about the White Armor Emperor? In the next scene, the White Armor Emperor personally checked the situation and asked the 90 venerables to lead more than 500 people into the shell. In such a way, even if Han Fei attacked again, he wouldn't be able to hurt many people. In such a situation, Han Fei certainly couldn't attack. Otherwise, he would fall into the White Armor Emperor's trap. After a while, everyone, including Yu Kailing, entered the giant shell space. At this moment, the White Shell capital indeed became an empty city. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor's voice echoed in the sky above the White Shell capital. Han Fei, I know you are still in the city. You want the White Shell capital? Then I'll give it to you. You can die together with the White Shell Royal City. At that moment, in the void, the sky-reaching shell shadow opened and closed its big mouth, as if it were going to swallow the entire White Shell capital. The White Armor Emperor's voice was cold. Han Fei, are you still not coming out? I'll send you and the entire Baibei Royal City into the endless void. You will be lost in the eternal darkness. And Mu Wuhua will still not be able to kill me. Although this domain wasn't big, there were countless sea spirit realm monsters. Do you really think the death of tens of thousands of people can shake me? The old turtle said, sure enough, what he wants is not to take people out but to kill you. But this time, he will pay a heavy price. Even if he completely destroys the White Shell capital, he will force you out. Han Fei was speechless. Old Yuan, it is indeed possible to get lost in the endless void, right? The old turtle said, of course. Not every time there will be an exit waiting for you to come out. In the boundless void, there is indeed only boundless darkness. Let alone a half-step monarch like you, even this emperor would lose his way if he were to enter. There is no concept of time or direction. The greatest possibility is that you will die of old age in the boundless void. Han Fei's face darkened. So, I can only go out? The old turtle also said in a deep voice, that might be the case. This should have been the only path we could have taken a long time ago. While the old turtle was talking, hundreds of fish skin maps floated down around Han Fei. Hundreds of arrays appeared on the fish skin map. On Han Fei's waist, the venerable token was already hanging. Activating the Gemini Divine technique, Han Fei grinned and said, then let's go out and have a try. Today, let's feel how strong a real king is. Chapter 1674. The White Armor Emperor seemed to know that Han Fei would come out, so he was not in a hurry at all. In reality, if the White Shell Royal City was completely smashed into the endless void, the White Armor Emperor would lose a lot more. It could be said that all the secret training grounds in Baibei Royal City had to be redesigned. The entire earth vein of the White Shell Kingdom would have to be abandoned. As for the Forbidden Land trial grounds, it was possible that it would disappear forever, with no place to find it. However, the White Armor Emperor didn't care. As long as he could kill Han Fei, he would destroy the entire Baibei Royal City if Han Fei didn't come out today. With the White Armor Emperor's boldness, Han Fei had no other choice but to go out. However, going out represented a battle, and the opponent would be a king-level cultivator, perhaps even a few half-king-level cultivators. Although the half-step king was no longer Han Fei's opponent, as long as Han Fei delayed him, the White Armor Emperor would have a chance. Swish, swish, Han Fei's figure appeared outside Forge the Universe. Since he was destined to go out, it made no difference whether he went out sooner or later. The moment Han Fei came out, the 100 fish skins around him unfolded at the same time. Immediately afterward, Han Fei punched at the Baibei Royal City's defense array with the World's End close step. The moment Han Fei appeared, the White Armor Emperor's eyes flashed, and he grinned coldly. Shell suppresses the void, swallow the sea and devour the soul. The White Armor Emperor's voice was cold. Do you think you can escape? Even if you're the most powerful venerable one in the world, you're still just a venerable one. You have no idea the difference between a king and a venerable. Seeing that the void was blocked, Han Fei didn't hesitate at all. Only by breaking through the White Armor Emperor's domain could he have a chance to escape. Back then, the White Armor Emperor blocked the heavenly tribulation with a big shell, and Han Fei had witnessed its terrifying power. Therefore, Han Fei's current attack must create a chance for the body of black fog. Therefore, from the very beginning, Han Fei had already used the power of the Great Path. The ancient desolate combat body burst forth, and the chaotic energy surged. At the same time, the array formation gathered at the tip of the fist, and the will of invincibility condensed on the fist. The White Armor Emperor looked at this scene coldly. He held 2 large circular blades in his hands, and his figure had already arrived next to Han Fei. Boom, crack, bang. How is this possible? The White Armor Emperor's eyes suddenly widened. Could the power of the venerable realm break the seal of my shell? Even if the White Shell capital city's 5 demi-kings attacked at the same time, they would not be able to break his shell space. Poochie. Although he was protected by the 100 Daos formation, Han Fei was still unable to block the power of the White Armor Emperor's blade. The body of white mist and the void collapsed together. Therefore, when Han Fei punched through the shell space, the White Armor Emperor shattered a large area of the void with a knife. Even Han Fei's misty body was smashed into pieces, but he was still stunned. There were 2 reasons why he was stunned. One reason was that Han Fei broke through his seal, and the other reason was that it was a clone of Han Fei that broke through his seal. This was what the White Armor Emperor couldn't stand. Too fast. Han Fei's growth was too fast. How many years had it been? The last time they met, Han Fei was only an advanced venerable. His current strength was already comparable to a king tier? Yes, the White Armor Emperor could confirm that at least in terms of strength, Han Fei had almost reached the Pioneer Sea state. This almost indicated that this sea area had just destroyed a Blood Sea Divinewood city, and as a result there was another king tier. And this king was a human, the same as Mu Wuhua. In the White Armor Emperor's opinion, the difference between Han Fei and a king tier was only a few F***king heavenly tribulations. He watched Han Fei pass Xuefan's heavenly tribulation. At that time, Han Fei was still an advanced venerable. Now, Han Fei was a demi-king. Wasn't it a piece of cake for him to pass a tribulation? Thinking of this, the White Armor Emperor's perception swept the void, looking for where Han Fei's real body was. If Han Fei wanted to escape quickly, his speed couldn't be too slow. The White Armor Emperor's perception didn't need to see Han Fei. He only sensed the changes in space. Sure enough, in just an instant, the white armor emperor stepped through the void and threw a knife to a place 800 kilometers away. At this time, the body of black mist knew that it couldn't run away, so it directly showed itself. After crossing 3,000 kilometers in a few steps, the white armor emperor's knife still caught up with it. Bim Han Fei turned around and punched horizontally. On the tip of the fist, time flowed, and the white armor emperor's crazy power cut the air on both sides. Han Fei stepped back and launched so close, yet worlds apart. But no matter how fast Han Fei was, the white armor emperor wasn't slow either. In the blink of an eye, the two appeared 10,000 kilometers away. In the sky above the White Shell Kingdom, the 5 demi-kings were all dumbfounded. Damn it, is he still a human? It was the first time in their lives that they had seen a venerable fight against a king, because the strength of Han Fei, Little Black, and Little White was constantly growing stronger. Therefore, the distance between the two clones could be further. 10,000 kilometers away, Han Fei shouted, "White Armor Emperor, I'm here. Let's see if you have the ability to catch me." "Humph! You're courting death. Suppress." An invisible force directly ignored the existence of space and fell on Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei only felt that the area within 100 meters of him was blocked by an invisible seal. The body of black mist directly turned into a cloud of black mist. The black mist swirled wildly, and in the blink of an eye, half of the seal was eaten. At this moment, the white armor emperor's fist mark had already blasted over. However, at the same moment, where the body of white mist collapsed, Han Fei's figure reappeared. Not only did he appear, but also a teleportation array appeared. This was a long-distance random teleportation array, with a teleportation range between 200,000 and 500,000 kilometers. At the moment when the body of white mist appeared, the white armor emperor shouted, "Hai Ting Lei." Boom! Before the white armor emperor spoke, a lightning mark had arrived in a flash, intending to stop Han Fei. Behind Hai Ting Lei, the other 4 demi-kings also reacted and were coming to rescue him. Half of Han Fei's body of white mist had already entered the array, and he shouted, "Time, draw the knife." In front of Han Fei, time reversed. Han Fei drew a knife from it. Perhaps when facing the white armor emperor, Han Fei didn't show much strength. However, the speed of Hai Tinglai's lightning mark became very slow in the face of time. A blade of time didn't give him any chance at all. With one slash, Hai Tinglai was cut into pieces, and his flesh and blood quickly decayed. Boom! It wasn't the crack of the heavenly law that appeared, but Han Fei's body of black mist and the white armor emperor collided. Although most of the body of black mist had exploded into powder, Han Fei still grinned. "I thought, how strong is a king? It turns out that you're just SOSO. As he spoke, Han Fei's body of black mist shouted, "This place is forbidden." The next moment, Han Fei stretched his hand into the void and directly grabbed Hai Tinglai's body, 3 wisps of soul, and a sun-moon shell into the teleportation array. Gemini as one. Swish! The next moment, Han Fei used Gemini as one and recovered to his full state. At the moment when he stepped into the void, he looked back and stretched out his hand. Time reversed, accelerating the closing of the teleportation array. Even though the white armor emperor's blow had already touched the teleportation array, he still hit nothing in the end. In the void, Han Fei's void lines pierced straight at Hai Tinglai. Hai Tinglai, who was trying to be reborn, was horrified. How is this possible? How can this person be so strong? He couldn't even block one blow and was smashed to pieces. Is this guy a king? After a few seconds, Han Fei drilled out of the void. The nautical panorama in his hand was already pointing in the direction of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Before Han Fei had time to kill Hai Tinglai, he once again escaped into the void and began to flee frantically. Of course, before escaping into the void, Han Fei's soul collided with the White Armor Emperor's soul above the sea and collided with each other. The old turtle said, "Don't fight head-on. Go to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." The distance of more than 300,000 kilometers was nothing for a king. However, what chilled the White Armor Emperor was Han Fei's clone ability. A clone could break the seal of his shell armor. A clone could take a blow from him head-on. Han Fei's strength had already surpassed that of a half-king and had entered the realm of a king. And Han Fei was also measuring the strength of the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, didn't you say that the power of an ordinary king is only about 50,000 waves? The White Armor Emperor's power is more than 50,000 waves. It's at least 60,000 waves." The old turtle snorted coldly and said, "He has been a king for tens of thousands of years, okay? Besides, his power is not 60,000 waves, but at least 70,000 waves. And that's because he made a hasty move just now. I'm afraid that his strongest power may reach 80,000 waves." Boom! At this moment, Han Fei killed Hai Tinglei. A crack of the Great Path appeared in the sky. A half-king was killed in one blow just to intercept Han Fei for a moment. After all, it was a celestial phenomenon of the death of a half-king. It was impossible for the Cloud Sea Divine Tree to not notice anything. Han Fei's clone shouted, "Your Majesty, help!" Li Daxian suddenly became vigilant and looked at Han Fei. What happened? Boom! At that moment, when the crack appeared, Li Daxian disappeared with a hum and rushed straight out of the Dark War port. When Han Fei rushed out of the White Shell Kingdom, the White Armor Emperor had already chased after him. The distance between the two was more than 300,000 kilometers, but now the distance between them was only a few 100,000 kilometers. Han Fei used all his strength, and the Heavenly Void Divine Walking Technique was useless at this moment. No matter how strong the Divine Walking Technique was, it was still a secret technique of the Venerable Realm. Facing the pursuit of a king, Han Fei kept activating arrays on his body, constantly accelerating himself. When he escaped 1.5 million kilometers, the White Armor Emperor had already chased after him. Han Fei used the Gemini Divine Technique again, intending to repeat the same trick. However, this time, only a giant shell could be seen transforming into a human. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "Han Fei, do you really think I don't have any means?" Chapter 1675. The White Armor Emperor also had an incarnation? No, this was the White Armor Emperor's spiritual beast. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name Royal Sea White Shell, White Armor Emperor's companion spirit. Introduction: an ancient shell inherited from ancient times. It can control the sea as a shield, defend all directions, and resist attacks more than 10 times its own. The Royal Sea White Shell is good at shield attacks and can crush the opponent with absolute strength. Level greater than 89, Half-King. Quality Ancient Mutant Great Path Royal Sea contains chaotic energy greater than 526 wisps. Edible effect, inedible collectible Royal Sea Shell, unabsorbable. Remarks, guarded by the Royal Sea White Shell, it is extremely difficult to get out. When he saw this thing, Han Fei was surprised. What kind of thing can resist attacks more than 10 times its own? Doesn't it mean that the defensive ability of this Royal Sea White Shell is also comparable to the king level? At the moment when the Royal Sea White Shell appeared, Han Fei saw that within 1,000 kilometers, there were water curtains. At first, Han Fei tried to avoid it. However, how much time would he waste if he avoided this thing? Swish Gemini in one. Han Fei had to merge, not because he was afraid of the Royal Sea White Shell, but because the purpose of the White Armor Emperor was just to delay him a little bit. If the defense of the Royal Sea White Shell was really that strong, it was indeed possible. Of course, if this companion spirit had also reached the king level, Han Fei wouldn't believe it. In that case, the White Armor Emperor would be able to beat the Life Queen, wouldn't it? After all, if two kings fought against one, the odds of winning would be much higher. At this time, Han Fei, who had merged with the Gemini in one, was in his peak state, so his speed was naturally much faster. Of course, Han Fei's speed was still slower than that of the White Armor Emperor. Therefore, only after fleeing for more than 300,000 kilometers, Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor finally collided head-on. Bam! Han Fei used 2 wisps of chaotic energy without hesitation. At the same time, his body shone with golden light and he punched out. Sacrificing punch. As a king, the White Armor Emperor naturally knew how strong the power Han Fei was displaying now was. This person could no longer be regarded as an ordinary venerable. He was simply a sea pioneer. At that moment, the White Armor Emperor held the giant shield and sneered. Han Fei, do you think it's so easy to be a king? I'd like to see how long a so-called chosen like you can last. Shield counter. Han Fei was still surprised. The White Armor Emperor was a king. Why did he raise his shield to block? Was he really that awesome? But the next scene stunned Han Fei himself. The power of the sacrificing punch was swallowed by the giant shield. In the next moment, he was bounced back. Holy shit! Han Fei had tried this move before, but how strong was he now? Using his own strength to attack himself, the key was that the sacrificing punch was a lock-on skill. Even if it was his own combat skill, he would still need time to block it. There was no doubt that if Han Fei resisted his sacrificing punch, the White Armor Emperor would definitely seize the opportunity. Therefore, at this critical moment, Han Fei didn't intend to resist, and a yin-yang diagram suddenly appeared. Poochie! The supreme yin-yang wheel forcibly cut the sacrificing punch, and Han Fei also collided head-on with the White Armor Emperor. Buzz, 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 crack, crack, crack. At that moment, the White Armor Emperor was also horrified. The sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level shield he had worked so hard to refine actually cracked under Han Fei's weird combat skill? Within 10,000 kilometers, the seawater became a vortex. A huge force surged between Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor's home. All the creatures within 1,000 kilometers, including the reefs in the sea, were turned into powder in an instant. A battle between kings, of course, had such terrifying destructive power. Sea defense. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor didn't intend to sacrifice his sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level shield, but to fuse with his companion spirit. The seawater in all directions knocked against each other as if the space around the world was closing. If Han Fei couldn't come out in time, he would be squeezed into pieces by the power of this space. Han Fei also intended to use the star teleportation technique. However, he found that the void here was blocked, and the star teleportation technique couldn't help. So, Han Fei made up his mind and used the infinity water to drill a hole. The level of infinity water was closely related to Han Fei's strength. Now, Han Fei's strength was infinitely close to that of a king, and the level of infinity water was infinitely close to that of a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Han Fei drilled a hole out of the sea defense technique. Seeing this scene, the White Armor Emperor was speechless. Why does Han Fei have so many means? Not only does he have more than one kind of great path, but why does he have so many weapons in his hands? At this moment, the White Armor Emperor had no choice but to fight Han Fei head-on. Dong, dong, dong. For a time, the golden fist marks collided with the shield armor one after another. In one breath, such terrifying forces collided as many as 100 times. Han Fei was horrified. He found that his peak strength, even with the primordial battle body, was still weaker than the White Armor Emperor. Therefore, every time they collided, it was Han Fei who suffered losses. Even with Han Fei's power of the Great Path, he could only last for 10 seconds at most. Han Fei thought, why hasn't the Life Queen come yet? Isn't my movement enough? Besides, I've already run more than half the way. If she doesn't come, Mu Wuhua will be suspicious. Sure enough, when Han Fei's heart was about to jump out of his throat, the Life Queen finally appeared. In the void, countless azure dragons appeared out of thin air. Countless huge vines wriggled around like dragons swimming in the air. Huge sunflower-like flowers appeared and madly shot at the space where Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor were. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, the White Armor Emperor's sea defense technique was riddled with holes. And this wasn't the end. How could the demonic plant clan be so powerful? The sharp blades ejected from the torrential pear flower detonated in the void like seeds, giving birth to one vine after another. The vines formed a net and directly cut the White Armor Emperor's sea defense technique. Han Fei took the opportunity to escape. He clenched one hand into a fist, and the time fist mark rushed out of his body for only 5 feet. With the other hand, he grabbed the time blade and slashed at the White Armor Emperor. For a moment, even the Life Queen was a little dazzled by Han Fei's operation. When did Han Fei master this great Tao of time? Such a high-level great Tao, and he used it so skillfully. Is he serious? Han Fei shouted, "Let's work together to kill him." As he spoke, Han Fei grabbed the infinity water and gathered the 100,000 blades into one, releasing a 1,000-kilometer-long blade light. Looking at his murderous look, those who didn't know him might think that he was the real king. The Life Queen said, "Go back. Don't fight." Around the White Armor Emperor, countless shells appeared and quickly intertwined on his body. Soon, it formed a layer of defensive armor that resembled battle armor. With this shell armor, the White Armor Emperor resisted Han Fei's terrifying blade light with both hands, stomped on the seabed, and forcibly shattered the power of Han Fei's blade with his shoulder. Boom! With a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water returned. Han Fei ran wildly. "Let's go." The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly. "You want to leave? You'll have to ask for my permission first." This time, the White Armor Emperor seemed to be determined to take Han Fei down. He knew that this was his only chance. Once Han Fei escaped and returned to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, there would be nothing he could do to him. At that time, Han Fei would almost certainly become a king. If Han Fei became a king, the White Armor Emperor wouldn't have to do anything but wait for death. He knew this much about his own limitations. Therefore, this time, no matter what the price was, he had to take action. Even if he had to kill everyone in the White Shell Kingdom, this battle was imperative. Therefore, the White Armor Emperor avoided the Life Queen and chased after Han Fei. Originally, the strength of a king against a king was basically equal. A battle like this would not yield any result. The White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen had fought more than once or twice. The two of them couldn't be more familiar with each other. Therefore, while avoiding the Life Queen, the Sea Royal White Shell appeared. The White Armor Emperor intended to use the Sea Royal technique to forcibly block the Life Queen for a moment to buy himself time to kill Han Fei. However, the White Armor Emperor still underestimated Han Fei's shamelessness. Han Fei teleported directly to the Life Queen's side. "Hey! Although I can't beat you, the one beside me is almost as strong as you. It's impossible for you to get past the Life Queen and kill me." Han Fei didn't have the demeanor of a strong master at all. He shouted at the White Armor Emperor, "You big shell, if you have the guts, I'll personally challenge you in a few years. Do you dare to accept?" The White Armor Emperor's face was cold as he sneered. "It seems that you don't want the Cloud Sea Divine Tree anymore?" The White Armor Emperor suddenly grinned, and the Sea Royal White Shell appeared in the sky. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "Sea Conqueror." In an instant, the White Armor Emperor felt 1,000,000 times the pressure. With a swish, the White Armor Emperor escaped into the void and disappeared. The Life Queen's expression changed drastically. Not good. The White Armor Emperor abandoned the Sea Royal White Shell and poured the power of the Great Path into trapping me for a while. He's risking his life. Han Fei was also shocked. He was too careless. This guy even gave up his companion's spirit, whose defense had reached the king level. A single person charging towards the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? How could that be? Although the Cloud Sea Divine Tree was also a king, its body was too big. and if the white armor emperor really attacked, he still had 50,000 troops under his command. Han Fei asked, "Can you break this sea royal white shell?" While bombarding it, the Life Queen said boldly, "You take action too. I can break it within 100 seconds. Han Fei was stunned. Within 100 seconds? Are you kidding me? Up to now, this place was only 2 million kilometers away from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Within 100 seconds, with the speed of a king, he would have already reached the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Han Fei's expression changed drastically. Perhaps he had an idea in a hurry. You bombard the Sea Royal White Shell first. Wait for me for a moment. With that, Han Fei disappeared. To the Life Queen's surprise, Han Fei didn't care much and directly entered Forge the Universe. Chapter 1676. Han Fei, who had entered Forge the Universe, summoned the Green Jade Bridge with a thought. This Royal Sea White Shell is indeed very strong in defense, however. The Water Immortal had also said that it would only take a moment to shatter it. But now they were fighting for time. This short period of time could once again affect the battle situation of the Shuemu Heavens. At this moment, Han Fei realized that the White Armor Emperor was really crazy. Sacrificing his companion's spirit? What was this guy thinking? How ruthless was this guy? On the Jade Bridge, Han Fei had already made up his mind. He was going to reverse time. Yes, he was only a peak advanced Venerable One when he fought Old Monster Chu. Currently, he was already at the half-monarch realm. They were both at the half-king realm, but Old Monster Chu could reverse time, so why couldn't he? In Forge the Universe, 1 second could be used as 16 seconds. On the steps of the Jade Bridge, Han Fei identified the Tao of Time that he created out of nothing as time displacement, which meant that he had entered a timeline similar to reality. When he walked up the stairs, he felt that the pressure was more than twice as heavy as before. However, Han Fei was no longer what he used to be. He walked to the 6th step in a row. At this time, Han Fei's legs were trembling. He had almost exhausted all his strength. From the looks of it, replicating another's great Daos required deep understanding and familiarity as well. Yet, Zhang Xian was actually trying to comprehend such a powerful great Tao of time out of nowhere? It was still a little lacking. Sure enough, when he reached the 7th floor, Han Fei couldn't even stand still and the Jade Bridge collapsed. Phew, again. This time, Han Fei stepped onto the Jade Bridge again. The Tao that Han Fei wanted to replicate was Old Monster Chu's power to infinitely reverse time. Seeing that it was a dead end, Han Fei walked 7 floors in a row this time. Although he had come this far, he seemed to have reached his limit and couldn't go on the 8th floor. In the end, the Jade Bridge collapsed for the 2nd time. The 3rd time, Han Fei stepped on the Jade Bridge again. Because there was no concept of time on the Jade Bridge. Therefore, there was basically no time wasted on the bridge. This time, Han Fei smiled self-deprecatingly. Old eccentric Chu couldn't reverse time infinitely. He should be able to turn back time conditionally. The condition for this was to consume either spiritual energy or chaotic energy. Because that was all the energy one could exhaust in the Exalt realm. As for the power of the Divine Soul, this shouldn't have anything to do with the art of time. It was a spiritual power that belonged solely to cultivators. This time, Han Fei envisioned time reversal with conditions. Sure enough, it was different from the previous 2 times. After paying the price, the Jade Bridge was much easier to walk. Although he was also under great pressure, he still walked down the 8th step smoothly. At that moment, countless mysteries about time inexplicably filled Han Fei's head. From this moment on, Han Fei also became a freakishly strong master who could reverse time. Han Fei knew that copying other people's paths also required constant polishing and understanding. For example, he was clearly much stronger than Old Monster Chu from back then, but Old Monster Chu's comprehension of the great Tao of time surpassed him by at least 2 levels. However, Han Fei's current power of the Great Way of Time was enough. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, How long has it been outside? The old tortoise was puzzled. It hasn't even been a breath. What kind of power did you get on the bridge? Last time, Han Fei walked on the green jade stone bridge and comprehended the great Tao of time, which scared the old turtle silly. In this day and age, is the cost of comprehending a grand Tao already so low? So, this time, the old turtle was already mentally prepared. Hearing this, Han Fei realized that not much time had passed. With a thought, he appeared in the outside world. At this moment, the Life Queen was bombarding the royal sea white shell. She didn't know where Han Fei went. However, no matter where Han Fei went, what ability did he have to leave this forbidden space earlier than her? However, less than a breath had passed, and she saw Han Fei suddenly appear. The Life Queen shouted, "Hurry up!" At this time, 5 wisps of chaotic energy in Han Fei's body suddenly collapsed. The massive power of the great Tao directly shattered Han Fei's body, turning it into a dark blue light. The next moment, she saw that Han Fei had appeared outside the royal sea white shell. The Life Queen was stunned and exclaimed, "The great Tao of time?" Han Fei pressed the void with one hand, and a complicated directional teleportation array was being drawn. Han Fei said, "Junior sister, you owe me a lot this time. I can block the White Armor Emperor for 100 seconds. Hurry up and kill this royal sea white shell. By the way, I have a share of his shells." Crack, crack, crack. At the moment a complicated array appeared, Han Fei stepped into it. The next moment, Han Fei disappeared in it. The Life Queen, the old turtle, was also shocked. What on earth is Han Fei's green jade stone bridge? If Han Fei had this ability, he could have easily escaped just now and wouldn't have waited until now. Therefore, the old turtle was very sure that Han Fei's green jade stone bridge was very, very powerful. From the time the White Armor Emperor left to when Han Fei drew the directional teleportation array, only 5 seconds had passed. The White Armor Emperor's speed was fast, but not to this extent. Han Fei was quite anxious, only to hear the old turtle say, "Fortunately, this is the barren land. The king here has limited means. Otherwise, he would have arrived in just 5 seconds. Before the old turtle could say anything, Han Fei appeared in the cloud sea divine trees flying featherclan with a swish. When Han Fei's clone saw Han Fei's real body, it directly shattered into nothingness. Han Fei held the nautical panorama in his hand. When the panorama pointed at the Dark War Port, Han Fei drew an array in his hand again. Outside the Dark War Port, countless people were preparing for a big battle. Before the Life Queen took action just now, she had already made arrangements. How could the Life Queen not know about the super battle between Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor? However, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had to make a foolproof plan. At this moment, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's 72 original bodies, the Yin-Yang Sky's 15, and the 4 venerable sea demons from the demon-subduing pagoda were guarding the foreside. Among them, almost half of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's combat power was outside the Dark War Port. This must be the place where the White Shell City and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree fought. Although other places could also be fought, the Dark War Port had routes that could quickly respond to the other 3 battlefields. Therefore, it was no surprise that there were enough troops in this key place. In fact, the Sea Demon Army had long withdrawn. In the past 3 months, everyone from the Waterwood Heaven had been exploring the surrounding sea and plundering resources. And just now, under the Life Queen's order, all the explorers outside were returning. Because Luo Xiaobai was very strict, she knew that Han Fei came here to communicate and fight, not to take these people to treasure hunt. Therefore, when many people went out to hunt for treasures in the Waterwood Heaven, no one from the Yin-Yang Sky went out. Although some people complained about Luo Xiaobai's strictness, they had a lot of resources with them. Since they couldn't go out, they could just cultivate. Fortunately, the dark water outside the Dark War Port was constantly fighting, and they could find some resources here. Suddenly, the Patriarch's voice spread in all directions. "All humans of the Yin-Yang Sky, Return to your positions immediately. No delay. As soon as these words came out, countless people were shocked. Someone's heart did a flip. Are we going to fight again? Brothers, give up the dark water and kill our way out. Someone grinned. We haven't done business for 2 months. I wonder how many sea demons will come in? Grandpa is waiting for us here. The hidden fishers of the yin-yang sky all rubbed their palms, still immersed in the illusion. The law enforcers had already rushed to the periphery of the Dark War Port. Outside the Dark War Port, countless people were still ready to go, ready to welcome the attack of the Sea Demon Army. But suddenly Serenity, the Bug King, the Patriarch, and the others changed their minds in the blink of an eye and shouted, "Retreat!" Perhaps influenced by Han Fei, Serenity stood proudly in the void, and her voice spread tens of thousands of kilometers away. Everyone, retreat to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Quickly, after saying this, a long spear appeared in Serenity's hand. The long spear was ready, and her essence blood was burning. Her strength rose to the extreme in an instant. At this moment, should she die or not? She didn't have time to think so much. The White Armor Emperor was here, right in front of her. Li Daxian appeared directly beside Luo Xiaobai and the others, his face solemn. The Sea Demon King is here. Luo Xiaobai was stunned. Who? Luo Xiaobai couldn't believe it. This was the last person who should come, right? Not to mention that the White Shell Royal City was blown up by Han Fei. The Life Queen had just shouted, and then she disappeared. Now it seemed that she had gone to stop the White Armor Emperor. But now, Han Fei didn't appear, nor did the Life Queen, but the White Armor Emperor appeared? She couldn't help but think about it. If something happened to Han Fei and the Life Queen, then the Shuemu heaven would be finished. There was almost no difference whether they ran or not. In front of the king, where could they run? However, Serenity and the others found out too late. By the time they could find the king, the White Armor Emperor was already 50,000 kilometers away. If they shouted again, they wouldn't have to run anymore. Serenity felt that she might be the most serious person in history. She had already set up, and she was bravely standing in front. Maybe someone would remember her bravery in the future. Serenity shouted and activated the Space Dao. Her body flew straight for 1,000 kilometers, and her spear pierced through the void for 3,000 kilometers, ready to collide with the White Armor Emperor. However, at this moment, in the sky, an array appeared, and a figure broke out of the array. A shout came, "Jing-er, back off." Chapter 1677. When countless people were still wondering why they had to retreat, the sky was torn apart, and a large array emerged, and Han Fei had already stepped out of it. Jing-er's spear had already been thrust out, and Han Fei's hand reached into the void and pulled out his saber to cut through the void. His saber seemed to have transformed, cutting through the night sky without leaving a trace, as if he was tearing a hole in the night with the saber radiance. How is this possible? The White Armor Emperor was shocked. After all, in order to trap Mu Wuhua and Han Fei, he had sacrificed his companion's spirit and sealed it with the Great Tao, all for the sake of buying these 100 breaths of time. The White Armor Emperor was sure that within 100 breaths, as long as heavenly venerable water would dare to fight to the death, he could slaughter more than half of them. At the same time, the aftershocks of the battle could destroy the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The White Armor Emperor was going to let the Life Queen know that when a king was angry, he would slaughter millions of corpses. He wanted to make the Life Queen and Han Fei regret it. However, the White Armor Emperor didn't expect that Han Fei would come so quickly. However, when Han Fei appeared alone, although the White Armor Emperor was surprised, he was overjoyed. If Han Fei died, the game would be revived. He wasn't afraid of the Life Queen or the 4 major races of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. What he was afraid of was a peerless genius like Han Fei. When this kind of person grew up, there was no bottom line at all. At this moment, he was already able to battle monarchs. In a few days' time, he might even be able to transcend the monarch tribulation. The White Armor Emperor casually shot out his spear, and Jing Er's spear attack was instantly shattered. Jing Er was horrified, but she wasn't surprised. Others might not know the difference between the Exalt realm and King realm, but she did. That was the difference in the level of life. Once one became a king, they could even awaken a special technique that was related to their own level. It was just like the White Armor Emperor's defense and the Life Queen's spring of life. Han Fei also knew that the gap between the Venerable Realm and the King Realm was several times the difference in strength. How could Jing Er's attack block the White Armor Emperor's? Therefore, at the moment Jing Er pulled out her spear, Han Fei drew out a knife. This slash traversed the heavens. It contained an unparalleled saber intent, showing off its magnificence. Clang! The White Armor Emperor's spear was shattered, and Han Fei's knife slashed with all his strength, causing terrifying ripples that swept for more than 8,000 kilometers. Phew! Han Fei let out a sigh of relief. Finally, he made it. If he had been a step slower, Jing Er would have been dead. Han Fei roared again. Everyone, retreat 100,000 kilometers. Jing Er was stunned to see Han Fei shatter the White Armor Emperor's attack with one slash. However, she didn't have time to think. She quickly retreated and said, "Everyone, retreat for now." Li Daxian moved closer and saw Han Fei rushing towards the White Armor Emperor from a distance. At that moment, he felt terrible. Li Daxian shouted, "Han Fei, can you do it? That's a genuine king." Behind Han Fei, the infinity water triggered huge waves. The waves were thousands of meters high, and they slashed at the White Armor Emperor like blades. Without looking back, he responded, "I'm fighting the king." Li Tianshan. Bang, bang, bang! In an instant, Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor collided. This was probably the first time that Han Fei had completely used the invincible Dao, which he wasn't quite sure about himself. Because he wasn't too sure, he didn't use it. But now, Han Fei was shining like the sun in the night sky, illuminating half of the sky with his power alone. The invincible fist mark struck like a stream of light. Dong, 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 boom, boom, boom. The White Armor Emperor was a melee fighter, and Han Fei didn't retreat, so he wanted to kill Han Fei. Although Han Fei's strength was beyond his imagination, he found that Han Fei's strength was weakening and he was retreating. And behind Han Fei were the hundreds of millions of creatures of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. If he retreated, what about those people? Knowing that the Life Queen couldn't come over, the White Armor Emperor understood. He didn't know what method Han Fei had used to escape from his royal sea seal. However, Han Fei was only one person. How could he stop him? Therefore, Han Fei had to die in this battle. 1 breath, 2 breath, 3 breath. Han Fei really couldn't bear it anymore. Even a terrifying combat technique like the Monkey King's 3,000 whips could be repelled by the shield. This caused Han Fei to retreat again and again. After 10 breaths, he had retreated 6,000 kilometers. At that moment, Han Fei was exhausted. Peaceful Peace, the Insect King, the Insect Queen, Wushang Shui, Li Daxian, and the others all watched Han Fei attack the White Armor Emperor, and they were shocked beyond words. He could block the White Armor Emperor for so long with the power of a venerable? Han Fei was the strongest person under the king level. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "Han Fei, you haven't become a king after all. How can you stop me? Since you overestimate yourself and insist on fighting, then die." Boom! The White Armor Emperor's voice was filled with madness and hysteria. Countless people stopped and looked at the sky. Peaceful Peace even shouted, "Han Fei, retreat," but Peaceful Peace felt that she shouted too late. She saw that in the terrifying explosion, Han Fei's aura disappeared. But the next moment she saw a blue halo flowing, and Han Fei appeared in a blue light curtain in a flash. At this time, Han Fei's strength had returned to its peak. However, Han Fei was not very happy, because he found that the longer he turned back time, the more chaotic energy he would consume. On average, if he wanted to go back 1 breath, he had to consume a wisp of chaotic energy. If he could hold on for 100 seconds, it meant that almost 100 wisps of chaotic energy would be destroyed by him. If they were in the wild, fighting with the White Armor Emperor like this, no matter how much chaotic energy Han Fei had, he wouldn't be able to afford it. He would eventually be exhausted to death. Han Fei couldn't help but think of Old Monster Chu's means. Even if Old Monster Chu's comprehension of the great Tao of time was a little deeper than his, it shouldn't be much deeper. The consumption of chaotic energy couldn't be underestimated. The great Tao of time? The White Armor Emperor was also a king. Even if the place where he lived was remote, he still knew the great Tao of time. There was no need to mention this. Almost every king had considered the existence of the time great Tao. However, who could really comprehend the great Tao of time? Anyway, the White Armor Emperor couldn't. Therefore, seeing that Han Fei's strength returned to its peak in an instant, the White Armor Emperor didn't feel good. Han Fei shouted, "White Armor Emperor, since you can't kill me, then go back. Take your sea demon army and attack again. Or, if you have the ability, release the army in your body now. I will kill another bat." Humph. So what if you have the great Tao of time? I don't believe you can reverse time infinitely. Bam! 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 While talking, the White Armor Emperor and Han Fei rushed together again. This scene left peaceful and the others dumbfounded. Even Li Daxian looked at this scene in shock. Reverse time? What kind of magical ability did Han Fei learn? That was the great Tao of time. With the time bought by Han Fei, the army of the Dark War Port was retreating frantically. Everyone was not an idiot. Just by listening to the sound, they knew that Han Fei and the White Armor Emperor were fighting. And they were fighting violently. Thousands of miles away, a trace of power that escaped could sweep in all directions. A bug buzzed. "Can Han Fei fight against a king now?" A sky creature said, "Han Fei's original body is from the sky race." A human said, "Come on. Isn't it just Han Fei who turned into a bird? Do you think he's from the sky race?" Someone said worriedly, "Why is Han Fei fighting against a sea demon king? Where is the queen? Where is the queen?" Someone said, "The queen was still here a moment ago. Maybe the queen has something important to do," so Han Fei took the lead. And the humans of the Yin-Yang heaven were sighing as they fled. Someone exclaimed, "General Han is really only a step away from becoming a king. Now, he can already fight against a king. What's the difference between him and a king?" Someone laughed. "That's right. Who is General Han? He's a rare talent. The Scattered Stars Island has existed for tens of thousands of years, and General Han has taken care of it. The aristocratic families have been here for tens of thousands of years. Han Fei can easily defeat the Thousand Stars Island." The people from the aristocratic families all had complicated feelings. In the crowd, Yang Diu said, "Sister Nanshi, I think you'd better not take revenge on Han Fei in this life. He has already fought against a king. Do you know what realm he is in?" Yang Nanshi snorted. "Why don't I know? I'm as talented as him." Someone couldn't stand it anymore and said helplessly, "Forget it. You are quite naive. Yang Nanshi, do you want to harm Han Fei? You have another way. That is to find a way to marry him and then do your best to harm him." Ha ha ha! Chu Qingyan's face darkened. Is there no hope for revenge in this life? Next to Chao Chiu, Chao Jiren said lightly, "Chiu won't lose to him in the future." Chao Tian didn't speak and still looked simple and honest. And there was a hint of struggle in Chao Chiu's eyes, and he murmured, "Bloodline of the god of war, why do I have to become the god of war? Why don't I become the god of war?" Dozens of breaths later, the insect queens of the insect race began to chatter away. A insect queen said, "Is the great path of time so terrifying? Han Fei has been destroyed 5 times. Can he still reverse time?" Seeing that Han Fei was so good at fighting, Li Daxian simply agreed to Luo Xiaobai's request and took the people of the Thug Academy to the sky. Zhang Xuanyu curled his lips and said, How can we catch him? Lu Renkuang shrugged. I don't know. Maybe if I swallow the white armor emperor, I can catch up with Han Fei. Li Daxian squinted at Lu Renkuang. It's useless even if you swallow 100 of them. Chu Jinan looked at Ling Yuan. Is the knife technique that senior brother taught us that move? Ling Yuan shook her head. I can't see how he fought at all. What's the point of asking me? As for Yi Xian and the others, they looked at the void eagerly, trying to extend their perception range to the maximum. However, it was useless. How could they see a battle between kings? At the back, in the dark water domain, the hundreds of thousands of humans who had retreated 50,000 kilometers were shouting at that moment. General Han, General Han, General Han! In the distant void, Han Fei once again reversed time, stopped in front of the White Armor Emperor, and shouted loudly, White Armor Emperor, if you can't kill me today, one day I will break your shell and forge a weapon. Chapter 1678. Now, Han Fei needed chaotic energy to fight and reverse time. He had never felt that chaotic energy would be so important. In fact, Han Fei already knew that chaotic energy was actually equivalent to the compressed power of the Great Path, which could stimulate his own Great Path. Now that he really used it, he realized that this thing was not enough at all. The Life Queen hadn't returned yet. The White Armor Emperor's face, which was quite calm at first, began to twist and look a little crazy. Han Fei realized that this guy might go crazy. Sure enough, when Han Fei reversed time for the 6th time, the White Armor Emperor pushed Han Fei away. In the void, giant shells swallowed and spat out, and 50,000 troops and nearly 100 venerables appeared one after another. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Han Fei shouted, White Armor Emperor, the half-king of your White Shell Royal City is not here. If you attack now, you will be digging your own grave. Two projections descended out of thin air, and 5 White Armor Emperors appeared in the void. Han Fei took a look. A half-king realm? This guy actually used the projection of a half-king realm in a battle with me? The White Armor Emperor shouted, Han Fei, since I can't kill you, I'd like to see if I can kill these people. Then, the White Armor Emperor shouted, White Shell Royal City, everyone, charge with all your strength. Kill as many as you can within 5 minutes. At this moment, Han Fei knew that the White Armor Emperor had gone crazy. The White Armor Emperor, who had 5 half-king clones, clearly felt that the White Armor Emperor's strength was weaker when fighting Han Fei. And it was weaker by about 20%. It was conceivable that the Black Killer Snail King had lost 3 half-king clones in the Yin-Yang sky. Its loss was probably much greater than the White Armor Emperor's. However, the White Armor Emperor was 20% weaker, so he could no longer suppress Han Fei. Whether it was speed, strength, or defense, the two of them were now about the same level. Even so, if they fought for a long time, Han Fei's Great Path could only last a little longer. Han Fei didn't really have such strong power all the time. Fortunately, as long as he fought until the Life Queen came back, everything would be fine. This meant that Han Fei didn't have to consume any more chaotic energy. The moment the White Armor Emperor released these people, Jing the Bug King, Wushang Shui, Li Daxian, a total of 13 great sovereigns jumped out. Among them, only Jing the Insect King, and the Sky Clan's Red Falcon Half-King were at the Half-King realm. The others were either peak Venerable Ones or advanced Venerable Ones. Just when Han Fei thought that the Waterwood Heaven might not be able to resist 5 Half-King realm cultivators at once, 22 insect queens rose to the sky at the same time. The insect back gate formed a large formation, someone shouted. The remaining 2 half-monarch projections let us, at this moment, the old turtle said. This kind of projection is the most meaningless projection, it will consume the main body's power. But at this moment it was indeed extremely useful. Now that the White Armor Emperor is weak, it's the best time to kill him. Han Fei was lost for words. How can I kill them? Even if he split into 5 projections, his strength would still be comparable to mine. Obviously, he had it all planned out. How could he give me the chance to kill him? The old turtle pondered for a moment. Let me prepare. My emperor's soul can shake him for a while. However, there is only one chance and I can't guarantee it. Besides, if I attack this time, my soul will definitely be damaged, and I need to devour the soul power of at least 10 advanced venerables. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Then why didn't you say so earlier? It's just 10 advanced venerables. Once the White Armor Emperor dies, all the venerables in the Baibei royal city will be ours. The old turtle said, although I can shake his soul, it can only last for 1 second at most. Can you break his defense in 1 second alone? Do you want to wait for your junior sister to come? Han Fei made up his mind and looked back. The Waterwood Heaven could barely resist the 5 Half-King Realm clones. However, the premise was that the Waterwood Heaven had to sacrifice 25 high-end combat power to barely resist them. The remaining venerables had to face nearly 100 venerables from the Baibei royal city. The Waterwood Heaven was at a great disadvantage. If there were venerables who maliciously slaughtered them, the Waterwood Heaven would suffer heavy losses. And now there were still at least 10 minutes before the Life Queen returned. After the Life Queen broke the array, she still had to rush back. Han Fei couldn't help but shout to Jing-er, can the Cloud Sea Divine Tree really not make a move? Peaceful gritted her teeth. She had asked Han Fei this question before. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree could make a move, but only for self-protection. Besides, the power that the Cloud Sea Divine Tree displayed wouldn't be very strong. Its main power was to maintain the existence of a world and provide shelter for billions of creatures in the Waterwood Heaven. Because the direction of evolution was different, the function was naturally different. The old turtle said, my suggestion is to wait. Han Fei gritted his teeth and said, Old Yuan, can't you use this secret technique twice in a row? The old turtle was speechless and hummed, I only have 1 soul. How can I use it twice in a row? I'll have to fall into a deep sleep. It's hard to say when I can return. Han Fei said helplessly, if it doesn't work, I can use the Demon King's contract and summon part of your soul here. He heard the old turtle leisurely say, my divine soul is all here. After being suppressed for too long, most of my soul has been obliterated. Only this wisp of soul and my body can be used. Unfortunately, my body can't descend in this way. The old tortoise still had many uses. He would still need the old tortoise for some secret matters. Besides, when he left the Yin-Yang Heaven in the future, he also needed the old turtle to provide him with various references. So, let the old turtle fall into a deep sleep? Of course, Han Fei wouldn't agree. But now that the battle had begun, it would be too late if he didn't take action now. The White Armor Emperor had clearly cut off all means of retreat and abandoned the entire White Shell Kingdom. He wanted to by this time and defeat most of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's combat power. The White Armor Emperor shouted angrily, You want to kill me? Don't blame me for dying together with you. At that moment, when the two sides clashed, Han Fei suddenly shouted, Old Yuan, do it. The old turtle didn't know what Han Fei was planning, but no matter what, he was actually not in a hurry. Han Fei's potential was beyond doubt. It didn't matter even if he delayed a little more time in the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. For the old turtle, whether Han Fei could kill the White Armor Emperor now or not, it was nothing more than a little more time. Above the sky, boundless black gas suddenly emerged. Swish, swish, 12 black chains, at some point, had already buckled the White Armor Emperor's body. At that moment, the White Armor Emperor's eyes turned black. Seeing this scene, Han Fei knew the time had come. Gemini Divine Technique. The White Mist Clone and the Black Mist Clone attacked at the same time. Because they had been prepared in advance, they used the power of time again. Han Fei grasped the power of time and drilled into the void. The White Armor Emperor's half-king clone was horrified, and an idea came to his mind: avoid Han Fei. However, Han Fei had used the old turtle's only chance to attack. How could the White Armor Emperor avoid it so easily? Even if Han Fei used the Gemini Divine technique, he was still much stronger than a half-king. Therefore, Han Fei approached the White Armor Emperor's half-king clone in an instant. Puff, puff, the two clones were directly cut down. Because they were not the White Armor Emperor's real body, there was no such thing as rebirth from a drop of blood, and there would be no cracks in the sky. Therefore, the moment these two half-king clones were cut down, they simply died. And the other three half-king clones had already begun to escape the moment Han Fei attacked. Only the Black Mist clone, because it was usually invisible, was not easy for the White Armor Emperor to avoid it. At this moment, Han Fei only had time to attack the three projections of the White Armor Emperor. When the Black Mist clone found the third projection, Han Fei's figure broke out of the void with a buzz. With a thought, the strength of the White Mist clone was greatly reduced. But in the void, in different places, 4 different projection clones of Han Fei appeared. Together with Han Fei's White Mist clone, a total of 5 Han Fei at the peak of the Venerable Realm appeared. Even if Han Fei's strength was at the peak of the Venerable Realm, it was not for nothing. Under the void descent technique, he heard, rumble, rumble, above the sky, 5 cracks of the Great Tao appeared in a row, almost at the same time. The cracks of the Great Tao crisscrossed in the sky, intertwining, looking very strange. Li Daxian muttered to himself, no wonder he is the destined master of the immortal palace. Tranquility, the Insect King, and the others had already started fighting. What Han Fei did surprised them and horrified them at the same time. Wasn't Han Fei's strength a bit too strong? Those were 5 powerhouses at the peak of the Venerable Realm, and they died at the same time? Han Fei also cut down the 3 half-king clones of the White Armor Emperor. Was he still a venerable? Han Fei was about to kill a few more venerables with the Black Mist clone, only to hear the old turtle say, "It's too late. Hurry!" Crack! As soon as the old turtle's voice fell, the 12 black chains collapsed. Seeing this scene, Han Fei immediately combined the 2 into 1, and all the projections disintegrated. Supreme Yin-Yang Image. A lot of things could be done in a second. For example, the scale that determined the outcome of a super battle. The White Armor Emperor already knew what had happened. Unfortunately, the moment he broke free from the shackles of his divine soul, he saw a black and white image appear, crushing his body. Sizzle, 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 crack, crack, crack. Under the great Tao of Yin and Yang, the White Armor Emperor had just broken free from the shackles of his divine soul. All he could do was resist. But he knew that the annihilation of the 3 half-kings and the fall of the 5 peak-level venerables not only freed up a half-king on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's side, but also freed up 22 great venerables. This caused the peak combat power of the 2 sides to return to balance again. The White Armor Emperor's heart was bleeding. The situation was hopeless. The venerables' combat power was equal, so they couldn't win quickly. This put the White Armor Emperor in a dilemma. The Life Queen was about to return. Han Fei was like a dog-skin plaster, fighting to the death without retreating. He didn't have time to take these people from the White Shell Royal City away. And now, the White Armor Emperor knew that if he didn't leave, he might be suppressed by the Life Queen and Han Fei together. At that time, his life would be uncertain. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor seemed to understand something. Why did Xue Fan sacrifice so many people to help him become a king? Because other than himself, no matter how many people he trained, they would not be his purest power. Instead of that, why not devour them all? This way, he could become an extremely powerful king. Unfortunately, the White Armor Emperor understood the true meaning of evil cultivation too late. At this time, he had to run. The White Armor Emperor said to him via voice transmission, "Venerable Xue Fan, run quickly." After saying this, the White Armor Emperor broke into the void, and Han Fei followed him. However, the White Armor Emperor turned around and ran. Yes, a mighty king ran away just like that. First update. Asking for votes, End of this chapter.